KnockBack, the retro and nostalgia podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to KnockBack. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my brother Dagan Shallot Moriarty. Dagan, thank you for joining me today. Of course, a reference to Eugene Shallot, not the shallot, which I love. I love shallots, but we're talking about Eugene Shallot. Dagan Shallot Moriarty. How are you today, Dagan?
And KnockBack is live in 3, 2. Don't you love the way they do that on movies? They can't. It's so fascinating. When I used to go to like E3 productions, when it was like proper production companies doing shit, and you had like an earpiece in and stuff, they would do stuff like that. And I'm like, why? I used to want to laugh because I'd be like, all right, you're back in 3, 2. And then it's like, it's just, everything's just waiting for you to do something. It's just all dead silent, you know, and you're just staring at the camera. That's got to be nerve wracking.
Yeah. I used to say that I would just start playing a version of myself, you know, like you have to be, I don't prepare for interviews, which my audience knows famously. I do not prepare for interviews, like by design. I know what I know who the person is and what they did, but I don't go like, you know, I'm going to ask you this and then this. So I just walk on the set and there's, you know, Phil Spencer or something like that from Xbox. And I'm like, all right, we're going to talk about Xbox for 15 minutes and we'll see what happens.
I like it.
Yeah. And then it always works out because then it goes where they want it to go.
Yeah.
Not where I wanted it to go.
Very sophisticated.
They're not there for me. They're not there. Very similar to KnockBack, where they're not here for me. They're here for you. And we're, of course, so pleased with the support we're getting on YouTube, especially. We've been doing the show since early 2018, but we started doing it on YouTube in 2021 this year, and we're getting really great feedback on that. People are especially, I don't want to say it again, but I'm going to.
Don't. You're gonna
being too nice to Dagan.
So nice. So nice. Like literally like 999 out of 1,000 comments are super polite. And kind. Just kind. Yeah.
I don't see many people say, I really don't see almost any, because I check in, I don't see almost anyone saying anything to you. Like mom tweeted out something a few days ago to me that was random. And then a few people said something mean things to her, which was like just totally.
Really?
Yeah. But it was like totally unrelated. Like it was like people that don't even know that are just like driving by and they're searching for things.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, I want to say something so bad, but you just need to ignore it, I guess. So, I don't know, but nonetheless, we're doing our show audio still every week and on YouTube now. Thank you for your support and kind words. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia, where you can get early ad-free access to every episode of our retro and nostalgia podcast, KnockBack. In addition, early access to our other shows as well. You can go learn about all of that. Also, we have merch now at laststandmedia.shop, and I'm really excited about it. It's really good. It's doing extremely well. I actually got a message from the like the CEO of the company or something saying like, wow, you guys are killing.
Oh, wow.
Actually, I read, and you'll like this too.
Yeah.
I read, so there's a guy named Rob, really nice guy. He's the founder of American Print on Demand, who's doing our stuff.
Okay.
An American company, all made in America.
Very important.
Very important.
Very important to you.
So he said in part, he wrote a really nice email, but, and I said this on Sacred Symbols. He said this in part about our merch. He said, quote, "It's been fun watching the rocket ship of a launch the store had. The conversion we've seen with the Last Stand shop is a testament to the devoted fan base you've built over the years." End quote. So thank you all out there for supporting it, and you can get your KnockBack shirt. You can get your Sacred Symbol sweatshirt and your vinyl stickers, which I'm really excited about.
You love the vinyl logos. You love them. You love them.
Oh, I love them. Man.
You gotta have them.
Who doesn't love vinyl stickers?
I think everybody loves them.
Yeah, they're really nice. So thank you for supporting us over there as well. Now, Dagan, how are you doing? Before we get into the topic, I'm curious how your life is.
Thank you so much, my friend. I'm doing good. You know what's on my mind? You probably could guess. Colin knows this already. I've been thinking a lot about this week. A little bit of anxiety and trepidation, but mostly excitement. You guys out there won't know yet. I'm about to tell you. If you do know, it's creepy because I haven't said anything about it. So you got some kind of, you know, magical powers. Deja vu, whatever it is.
They're in your closet, in that closet in your office.
They might be in the closet.
Yeah.
They might actually be in multiple closets.
Yeah. Come out of the... It's okay. You can come out of the closet.
Come out. You don't need to be in there.
It's 2021.
It's but that's a separate issue.
Yeah, of course. I consider them linked, but please.
But I'm starting a new job.
I'm leaving. And you know what's funny, Kyle, about this? A lot of people, not a lot of people, but multiple people have DM'd me on social media and like, yeah, dude, like what's going on? Like you don't talk about work that much these days, which is kind of weird on a couple of fronts because I don't feel like I talk about my day job that often anyway. It comes up depending on the topic. I'm not afraid to talk about it, but certainly I consider that a separate life. I tell my animation people the same thing, like my podcasting world, because they're like, look at your background. You know, I have Zoom calls at for the day job and they're like, what the hell is all that back there? And I'm like, I podcast. If you don't know, it's a whole separate thing. I'm not going to go into it with you right now. That's my own private world. It's for me. You know, it's for my brothers, for our listeners. But I've been at Sesame Workshop. A lot of you guys know I'm an animator and a character designer by trade. I work in the TV animation business. I've been at Sesame been there since 2009. With 1 year that I left, the initial project I started there, I spent about 3 or 4 years. It ended, that project wrapped. I kind of kicked over to another production that a friend of mine was working on and then came back to Sesame for a brand new project and a brand new team. And I've been there ever since. So altogether, it's been over 10 years. But I took a new job, very excited, as an animation director. I'm a first-time director on a brand new preschool series. I can't say too much about it yet. I'm sure I'll be able to reveal details as time wears on into the spring and summer, but super excited. But I've been thinking a lot about this, like, it's starting over. I think it's dangerous to get too comfortable in whatever you do, Kyle. I think you probably, of a like mind when it comes to this. Yeah. You don't want to get too comfortable. Certainly. You want to grow, right? You want to evolve. Certainly. And I think it was a good step for me, not only as a first-time director now, but also just in just growing professionally, making new relationships. But it's a whole thing now where it's like you're an unknown commodity now, your personality, your picadillos, whatever your process, like everything. It's like getting to know a new group of people. Now, I'm very proud to be going where I'm going. It's an animation studio in New York that's been around for a long time. They have a great, sort of legacy, very high quality work. Super proud to be a part of the team. I love the guy who runs this shop. He's really a like-minded individual. And we've been talking about working together for a pretty long time, and it's nice to have the opportunity to do it. So that's really what's been on my mind is like, okay, it's like kind of, stepping in a new direction after over a decade of doing the same thing. Yeah. For a long time. And also leaving my family behind at Sesame. A lot of these guys and girls I've known for a long time that even predate, being at Sesame. Particularly one guy, my friend Joe, who I've been with my entire career, basically. So, it's, there's a lot. I'm not necessarily that anxious of an individual, but I've been really I've been tossing and turning a little bit in my sleep. And I think because it's like, I'm a guy who likes to be comfortable. I'm like you, Kyle, right? You like to be comfortable. You like to know what to expect. So this is kicking out in a new direction for me as an adult in my 40s, where it's been very my course has been very kind of staid and samey. Now it's going to go off in a whole different exciting direction. And I have to, embrace that. And, all the emotions that come along with it, which is, that's, for me, that's been the last week, the things that I've been dwelling on. That's been at the sort of the center of my universe.
Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. It's a big jump. Also, I mean, you already have managerial experience, but you're basically, it's a totally new game now. You're kind of at the top. So now you have to kind of leave the trenches and and I know you've been really loath to do that. I was the same way. You're really only a first-time director by choice. Because you would have been a director already, I assume, right? An animation director.
I mean, I think I could have had
really been more comfortable leaving.
That's the other thing. It's like this opportunity kind of went unlooked for. It just kind of landed. It just kind of landed in my lap through people that I know that were involved in the whole thing and thought of me for the project, and probably wouldn't have jumped if it wasn't for this role. Because being a cog in the wheel is something I really enjoy. Being an animator, being a character designer. I never say just an animator or just a character designer because it's such a collaborative process. Animation, everybody's important. It truly is. And I really enjoy doing that stuff. But yeah, for me, it's like, it was time. I felt like it was time to make that move, where it's like, I feel like I could be a good leader. It's been a long time, even since I was an art director. It's been probably 5 or 6 years since I've even art directed. So it's nice for me to jump into back into that leadership role. And there's a certain appeal that comes along with that. That's different than just the appeal of being an animator or being a character designer or being a little lower down the totem pole, you know, where it's like you're calling the shots. The success of the project and the success of the people are hinged directly to your leadership. So I think it's going to be a really fun challenge. The project is really, it just speaks to me in so many ways visually. The art director is brilliant. Again, the leader of the animation studio, the head of the animation studio is a genius. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun, dude. I can't wait to keep you guys posted on it. But I feel like with KnockBack, it's weird. I never know, and you could speak to this, Kyle. You're much more of an expert on this. I never feel like if I should be too personal. I'm on the podcast. I'm generally a private person in general. Just when it comes to family and politics and all that kind of stuff, I don't really see the appeal of going into that on the podcast. The podcast is almost like a treat for me. It's like another part of myself that I get to explore on the side of everything else. Sure. I like to keep church and state separate if I can. But definitely, you know, but I at the same time, I love our audience. I love our community. I just feel like there's a weird part of me that feels like I need to keep you guys up to speed on what's going on with me. So hopefully it works in that regard. You're not like, Dagan, what do you talk about? Can we just get to today's topic? You guys are part of my life.
I totally understand that. I think many creators have to figure out the balance of candor and what they hold back to what they put on their shows or on their content. Because I'll talk about almost anything, but there are certain things that I just don't want to do. You know, or like there's always these little alcoves of people that are like, you know, let's do a football show, or it's like there are certain things where I'm like, that's mine. Like I don't have no problem talking about the Jets. I'll talk about them all day, but that's me. That's for me. It's the same thing with G.I. Joe and some of the other things that I do. Although I think I'm going to get back on Twitch with that this year, because maybe even in the coming weeks, just, you know, I put too much pressure on myself with Twitch, I think, because I really like to interact with the audience if I'm there. It almost seems pointless to be there. Like there's so many streamers that just stream. They don't even look at the chat. They don't care who's there or what anyone's saying. It just seems very weird.
That is strange.
And big and small do that, and it's common. It's very common.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to do it that way. Even when I was playing games like The Division or something, I was still paying attention to the chat. But what I think I want to do is, because I need to go through all my G.I. Joes anyway. Like, I got to start really cleaning them and putting them together and getting them taken out and stuff. Plus, there's a whole new set of stuff I bought, like the new G.I. Joes that I want to open. I got my Zartan figure today, which I'm really excited about. So
nice.
So all this stuff's coming, and I got my Cobra Officer, Cobra Infantryman, they're called now.
Nice.
And so I have all these things I want to do. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go on Twitch and just say, like, I'm doing this. And then in parentheses, like you see on YouTube during Let's Plays or whatever, it's like no commentary. And what it's just going to be is like a camera pointing down at the desk and a camera pointing at me.
Okay.
And I'm just going to go through my G.I. Joes and just clean them, and people can just watch it. Because I think that's the other thing, is that sometimes people just want to watch. Like, they're just looking for something in the background.
Yeah.
I do that all the time.
Me too.
I do that with Bob Ross. I mean, it's a little, and Bob Ross is actually talented, but it's otherwise a similar thing. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think that's the marriage of me holding back something, not having to go on and like say something and just kind of do what I was going to do anyway, but provide some sort of tacit entertainment to those that are looking for it. So I think that's the best way to do it.
You will. And you have that following, so why not take some of that into this new thing with you? But so you're not going to interact with the chat every time you go on?
I think that like we can every once in a while, but I don't, it was really like a running commentary, and I don't want to do that. It's just, I can't talk into a microphone for 2 or 3 hours a day and then go on Twitch. And I write these shows and stuff and prepare for them. I'm not saying where, like, I always use the coal miner operation. I got the black long pop. It's not anything like that. I know, but like, still work goes into it. The reason these shows are popular is because a lot of work goes into them. So it's not just talking and dicking around, and it's much of that. But
yeah.
So I think with the G.I. Joe thing, because like you can't probably see because your screen is a little bit more truncated on Riverside, but I have my shelf in the background now. I got like some of my toys lined up. You'll see in the final video, but I'm going to start putting, like, you know, I got to get a hiss tank on there and some other things, and so the work must proceed.
Absolutely. But, you gotta populate that shelf. I see your little DQ slime up there.
Yeah, he's up there, and there's right next to him is Tinker Knight and some others. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to filling that shelf and in the meantime, nothing else is really going on. Just, hey, you know what I wanted to tell you, by the way? I wanted to say this too. And this also came up on Sacred Symbols, but not really too in depth, is I've realized with my home ownership situation that I'm not really getting anything done when I show people an inordinate amount of respect. And what I mean by that is like, so let me give you an example.
Okay.
I have many examples.
Okay.
But it's really reached a head for me recently. The fence company, remember I was talking, remember when I wrote the letter to the fence company? So they're nice guys or whatever, but so it ended up being that they put the fence on one side of the property in the wrong place.
Oh no.
And yeah, so it's not like the end of the world. I noticed this and I'm like, okay, they put down like 14 feet from the house. It's really 17 feet. My neighbor's really cool. So they basically just gave my neighbor like 3 feet along like the side of my...
Oh, wow. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, this needs to be fixed. So I realized this like last year, but I didn't really want to bother them, you know? I'm like, there are other things going on. It's the summer. I'm sure they have a lot of jobs to fill.
Okay.
I'll just kind of get this in. And so like I sent them a message and we kind of went back and forth, and this had gone on for like months. And then earlier this year, I finally said like, you guys need to come and fix this now. It's time now for you to do it. So the guy came over and, he was really nice, but he, you know, this other guy, and he was like, oh yeah, it's like totally in the wrong place. And we mismeasured and stuff. And I'm like, all right, great. And this was like in early January. And then I just got them yesterday. So we're recording this on March 5th. On March 4th, I finally got them yesterday. It's like, we're coming on Monday.
Okay.
And the reason that I did that was because I kept sending them emails like every few weeks being like, hey, I hope you guys are doing well. Everything's going great in your lives. Just wanted to see when we're going to get the fence fixed. And then you'd send that email into the ether and never hear back. And then finally, here, I'll read you what I wrote to them because I think you'll find this funny. And again, because it's sarcastic, which is my way, but I said, hey guys, okay, so I'm not trying to be annoying or rude in any way whatsoever, but what's happening? And then in candor, I agreed to pay to move the fence. So I paid them $500 just for their labor and stuff.
Okay.
And so I'll explain why, because I really shouldn't have. But
no.
In candor, I agreed to pay to move the fence, even though this problem was 100% not my fault. In reality, it should have been done for free and with immediate urgency once discovered. I paid in order to make things easy and get it off my plate without any conflict. I feel like I'm being ignored and taken advantage of now, and so I really do need to know when my fence is going to be moved to the appropriate place on my property. If you guys aren't going to fix the problem, then just say so that I can find someone else to do it and move on with my life. Thank you for your time, Colin. And they answered me back in 5 minutes, and then they got like an appointment like 10 minutes later.
Wow.
But other emails would just be like, hey, you know, the email I sent before, you know, it's like, hey, just checking in. Hope you guys are well. Let me know when you can come fix fence. Just ignore that. I have to send shit like this. And it's not my way of doing things. I don't conduct myself like this. I don't, you know, so it annoys me. And so I had to do this with the builders with my house recently, and like the pool guy and the HOA who's busting my balls. I got approved by the HOA in my neighborhood for the pool before I moved in. I've been arguing with them about how I need to submit it for another approval. And I'm like, no, you approved it already. I'm building. And they're like, well, we don't know if we're going to approve or deny the plans. And I'm like, well, I'm building it anyway. So that's literally what I said.
Did you really?
Yeah. Cause I'm like, we already had this discussion. It's just like, it's almost like talking to automatons that have no agency over any situation. Like the woman at the HOA is like, here's the form you need to fill out. Here's the form. Wait 30 days and we'll tell you how to proceed. And I'm like, we already had this conversation.
We did this already.
This was like the part of the thing of me even buying this house.
Right.
You know, why are you guys so dense?
Ridiculous.
And it reminds me, Dad said this to me, where he's like, in the building world, you need to be like really assertive. There are so many shady ass shit. There's so much shady and scummy shit going on. And I didn't realize it. I thought I can conduct myself by just being a nice, normal person. But if you do, you just get kicked down to the bottom of the list or ignored.
That's absolutely right.
Have you observed this?
Oh yeah. You're speaking directly to me. You're speaking right to my soul on this. And it's funny when you bring up Dad, because we definitely didn't get our polite, sort of easygoing nature when dealing with people, dealing with workers, dealing with contractors from Dad. Because he's a hard ass when it comes to this stuff. He's definitely not like-minded. He's definitely like, you know, point blank, this is what needs to get done. Dad's fine. He's polite and everything like that. But I mean, to the average bear that he's dealing with, that's not a friend or a family member, he's just like, you know, assertive, you know, and this is what it's got to be. And I think that's all down to experience, because if he's been taken advantage of or pushed around or, you know, deprioritized or whatever it is. Like, a lot of these guys, it's funny that you say this now, Kyle, because I'm dealing with contractors this week too that have to fix stuff in the house that are basically due to a few different things, due to stuff being done wrong in the first place with roofing and stuff like that. So, and it is true. And it's so weird that you're saying this now, because it dovetails with something I was just watching that seems unrelated, but it is actually related. I forget who was talking about this, but somebody was interviewing an actress, and they were talking about like casting and going out for parts and trying not to have that stink of desperation, especially when you really want something. You know, you go in, you go on a call, you go on multiple calls, you really want something. It might have been Alison Brie, actually, our beloved Alison Brie.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about this, where she's like, she learned as she evolved and as she aged and as she accrued experience in the industry that you can't go in really wanting something with a lot of people that are in charge of the casting or in charge of the projects, because they almost do want like somebody who they could pursue. It's almost like the thrill of the chase type of thing. And with contractors, I think it's that, but also the fact that they have a list of priorities due to how, you know, due to, I guess, who they're dealing with, how tough the customer is, and also the, you know, the monetary value of the project. Like, these guys aren't going to make a lot of money off of you because it's something they've already been paid for. So if they have new things going on, they're going to put those new fences in first and kind of push you down to the bottom of the list, because they've already made their money off of you, which is you know, that's a shitty way to operate, but that's just the way it is. But I find that too, like, I think you almost want that contractor to be like you know, in personality or outlook or whatever, where it's like, you come, you try to be patient, you try to, you know, be easygoing, say, I want to be fair. You try to approach the whole deal with fairness. You understand they need to make money. It's a business, all that kind of stuff. But I think there's almost you know, such a thing as too much empathy, where you just have to be like, look, this is what it is. This is what I need. You name your dollar amount. I think I'm still struggling with the haggling part, you know, with saying like, give me 500, you know, let's talk about the price a little bit. Let's see if we can get it down. That's something I still struggle with too, which is, again, like, just needing to be a little more assertive. So absolutely, I definitely learned that over the years, where you have to almost like put up a front if you're like you or I, like, almost like be a little more icy than you would normally be, and almost like not showing the cards up your sleeve. You know what I mean? Not, you know, just saying, like, just being, I think it just really comes to being more assertive from the, you know, because you're very polite. You tried to say multiple times in a polite way, like, please come out and do this thing for me. And it wasn't until you sent that last email where they were responsive. So it automatically shows that you got bumped up to the list because of what you said there. I mean, the next step would have been to just say, like, I'm going to get lawyers involved, right? It was
yeah, I mean, my next step would have been like, you know, I'm blessed to not be living paycheck to paycheck. Where I would have been like, you know what, fuck you guys. I'll just have one of you. And I was literally, the next email was going to be like, I'm going to have one of your competitors fix it. And then I'll let everyone know.
That could have done it.
You know, so, that could have done it. So it's like, because it's not like there's a fucking million fence companies around here. You see them all the time. You see their stickers and their placards. It's like, I just chose X company. There's Y and Z as well. And
right.
Yeah. So I was frustrated by that, because I don't conduct myself like that. And so just to put this in the context, like, customer service is really important. I run a company with 5 freelancers and 2 full-time employees. Who answers the customer service messages? Me. I do. I answer them all by myself, because it is so important to make sure that the customer is happy. Yeah. That they should hear from me. Now, it might not always be that way, but it is that way for me now. And I put it to Micah like this, and I think this is the way that kind of encapsulates it, and then we'll move on to the topic. Sure. I can go to Chick-fil-A, and for $7, I can get like a chicken sandwich and fries and like a drink, and they're going to be really nice to me.
Yes.
They're going to be so nice to me. It's as if I spent $100 there. They're going to call me sir. They're going to make sure they're going to take the garbage away from me when I'm at the table. They're going to come out with their little iPad to take my order, so I'm not waiting too long, for $7. I pay, let's say, $5,000 for a fence, right? For a really nice, like, aluminum fence. You would think that you would be falling all over yourself to make sure that person was happy. The person at Five Guys or Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out is treating me like a god for spending $7 or $10.
Yeah.
You would think that the money ratcheted up to the point where, like with my builder, where I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a house, you'd be like, you think they would be fucking, you know, massaging your balls, basically, you know? Isn't that weird when you really think about it? Meanwhile, I have a bunch of customers that pay $1, $2, $5, $10 a month. We're really thankful for all of it. And I treat them all the same. In fact, I never even look at your support level unless it's germane to what you're asking me.
Right.
So it's just so, that's what's so weird to me. I'm so customer oriented with my small business to the point where I take care of everything like that by myself. And these guys can't even be asked to deal with a problem for these massive, expensive ordeals. And it seems like the more expensive the ordeal, the less accountable they are. And I got to say, I'm sure it's not everyone, but it is so weird that Dad told me to watch out for this. And then it immediately started happening. Yeah. And I think it was already happening. I just wasn't aware of it. And I think Dad told me that as kind of a way to be like, I know how you are. And you'll just get walked all over. And, you know, so anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
And you know what, dude, you're absolutely, it's a great comparison. And customer service begets more service, begets more employment, more jobs, right? You have untold amount of neighbors in that neighborhood, all brand new houses. A quarter of them are going to want fences, right? You give word of mouth to just two people over a year. It's 2 jobs, $10,000 to them. You know what I mean? So if their customer service was good with every one of them, then it just dominoes, right? So it's amazing that's not even considered. That's not even a consideration. That's just maddening.
Yeah, it's very strange. So yeah, and the reason I offered that, what's so frustrating me now is like, you know, I told them, I'm like, well, I feel bad. Like you know, this is your fault, but I let it go for a while, and you know, I'm willing to pay like a small nominal fee for your labor and stuff. And it's like, I really should have never done that. I was trying to like be nice. Like, yeah. I thought, it's like, all right, here's a concession. Let's not fight. Let's just, you know, you want a little bit of money. Okay. You know, just, you know, so whatever. I don't even know what I'm complaining about today. Digging the topic, as we haven't even mentioned yet, I don't think, is the movie theater. And we're really excited about this topic. This is a fan voted topic. Remember, if you support us on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia, one of the perks you can get is to submit topic ideas and then vote on other topic ideas. And we have a whole litany of those episodes. This is one of them. And I like these kinds of amorphous episodes. We've talked about this in the past. The audience likes them too, when we did like the video store or, you know, Recess or whatever. This is another one of those, the movie theater. So I'm curious, Dave. First of all, we have tons and tons of great submissions from the audience that will allow us to explore all manner.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. All manner of issue with the movie theater. But I'm curious, what comes to mind for you with the movie theater? And are you, obviously, from a nostalgic point of view, we were both ardent moviegoers because I think we grew up in a different time. I don't know that I would be an ardent moviegoer today. There's really no reason to be when you could just watch it all at home. But what comes to mind for you with the movies? And is it something that you enjoyed as a kid? Is it something that you still enjoy today?
Yeah. I mean, I love this topic. You're channeling your inner Gene Shalit. As you mentioned, I'm channeling my Steven Spielberg here. So I think it's going to be, and it's a conversation for our times, right? I mean, this will be fun and I think interesting, especially with the feedback from our listeners, because the nature of this discussion has changed and is kind of ever changing. It's really topical with everything happening in the world. And it's not just about COVID over the last year, although that turns out to be a big piece of this. I mean, the movie theater, physically going out to a brick and mortar place, a location to see a film, was something already going through the throes of an evolution, you know, prior to this pandemic. I mean, and this is due largely, it seems to me that this is due largely to, you know, cable and the big subscription services, basically commissioning works directly from creators. That's a big part of this, you know, that that whole practice changes the whole model. You know, which essentially it essentially removes an entire piece of the conventional process that was probably really put into modern times probably since dating back to the 70s, since the 1970s. Whereas, you know, which is a film is released into theaters, right? And it has its run. It has its sort of, It has its run in the theater over a matter of weeks, depending on what the movie is, depending on what the film is. And then it kind of finds its way onto cable, or way back when, into the video stores for home consumption. So now films are made and they go straight to the home, you know, bypassing a whole part of that conventional, traditional process. And they go straight to the cinema, and they go straight to the home rather, and skip the cinema altogether. So I think that's a big part of it too, where direct to video used to be this dirty word.
Yeah, I was about to say that. It was like a pejorative.
It was a pejorative. It's like it denoted like a C movie, or, you know, at best a B movie. Now it's a viable and acceptable sort of system for entertainment and for, you know, for home consumption. You know, home consumption is like a viable thing now. And then now we just add COVID into the equation, and you get a whole different, a more complex ball of wax that you're trying to, you know, that's accompanying these already existing changes. And also just, you know, in this conversation too, just thinking back to almost like an old timey thing now of like, the movie theater was a major part of our lives growing up. You being born in 84, me being born 10 years prior. And as I thought about this and sort of jotted down little memories and a list of things, there's some really fun talking points I think we could, you know, base around movies that I think will be fun with the audience too. And also my memories are kind of drawn up to different eras in my life. So the different periods of my life, from being a little kid to more modern times, you know, the late, you know, 2019, 2020, all that kind of stuff. I have all different things to say depending on the era that we're talking about. So this should be a pretty fluid conversation. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm really fascinated by this conversation because I have such a complicated, in my mind, relationship with movie theaters, because they really were an important part of my life. But I feel like I was of the last generation to really need them in some way. Like you almost, I argue just from a utilitarian point of view that I don't even think you need movie theaters anymore, and that I think that movies may be better without them. And we can make the argument and talk about the future of theaters, because I know it's a really contentious thing. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you at the top, before we even get into the past and kind of the way it was, David Graham wrote into us, and I was interested in this because I had to actually think about it, and I don't know that I even have the right answer, but he says, what's the last film you saw in theaters before the collapse of modern civilization? I would like to share that the last time I went to a movie theater, it was to see the Sonic the Hedgehog movie on Valentine's Day last year. It's going to get a sequel. Wow. It was very popular.
Is it really going to get a sequel?
Yeah, it was incredibly popular. People really liked it. And Drew Carey, you know, or not Drew Carey, Jim Carrey. Drew Carey, that would be awesome. Drew Carey was in it.
That would be more. That would be better casting. I would think.
Actually, Robotnik as Drew Carey is actually that's not. I don't hate it.
Well done.
You know. What about what was the chick with the Mimi from the Drew Carey show? She should be.
Right.
Remember her?
Yes.
She was with the makeup. She was awesome.
God.
But do you remember what the last movie you saw in the theater was? Because I think for me, it was that that Elton John biopic.
Oh, okay.
Rocket Man. And that was in 2019. I mean, that was before I haven't seen a movie in the theater since I left California. So what was the last one you saw? Do you remember?
Yeah, you know what? I really don't know if I remember this, to be honest with you. It could be, God, is it? I'm thinking it's The Rise of Skywalker, but I don't, that seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, it was more than a year ago when that came out. I didn't even see that in the theater at all.
No, you didn't see that in the theater.
Yeah, so
that's interesting. And the Sonic movie, I still theorize that whole thing with the character design and the audience participation and the kickback from Sega fans and everything, where they went in and changed everything. I think that whole thing was orchestrated. I think it was brilliant, but I really do think it was because those initial designs were that was a bridge too far. There's no way people making feature films of any kind had that bad a judgment. And nowadays, this isn't 40 years ago. There's no way. I just really think that whole thing was put on, and I think it's brilliant. I'm not criticizing it, but that Sonic movie, talking about that Sonic movie, reminds me of that it could have been The Rise of Skywalker. I intended to see Tenet, Christopher Nolan's Tenet, in the theater. Yeah. You and I were both talking about that, but no, I don't. But of course, I never got around to it. I still haven't seen the whole thing of that film.
I haven't seen it either, and so many people are trying to not ruin the story, but just being like, it's not very good.
Bad reviews. Very bad.
Shut up.
Reviews.
I'm sure it's not. Shut up.
I feel the same way.
You just don't get it. You know?
I feel like I'm going to come away from that movie thinking like, what are you guys talking about? This is amazing. Yeah. But I'm interested. So that's interesting.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that's I have no desire to go back to them now, but I think that was the last one, but there is so much to talk about. And
there is.
I wanted to begin here because this is a sign of the way it used to be. And I hadn't even really thought about it in a while. Timothy Martin wrote into us on Patreon.
Okay.
He says, "Hey guys, lots of movie theater memories as being a concession seller and usher was my first real job as a teenager in 1997.
Nice.
Kids today will never understand the complexity in planning your movie experience. Having to pull out the paper or call the movie phone line to get the showtimes. Backwards plan your transportation to the site only to have the awful sold out sign over the new releases and having to see the less good but available movie option. I stopped going to the movies for a few years in the mid to late 2000s and was floored that you can now buy tickets online that actually had a seat number assigned. How far we have come.
Oh, how far indeed.
Indeed. And I got to say, the only saving grace for me in modernity is that it has changed. Like I do, and we'll talk about them more later. Like the only movie theaters I really have any interest in going to anymore are the boutique high-end ones, because you get your seat, you can get like served. I think I told you when I saw Independence Day 2 in one of those at Alamo Draft House in San Francisco, I said I spent like $150.
That might be a record.
Between me and my ex-girlfriend, I was just like, the movie was so bad. I was just getting I think I had like 4 or 5 old fashions, and I was getting like food and all. I don't know. I was out of my mind that day.
That's awesome.
So to me, I actually like that, but I do remember those days. You would get out. I remember sitting with mom and dad or you guys, and you get the Sunday paper, you get the paper, and they have the times, and it's like, you want to go to Brookhaven, we can go to Patchogue. Neither of those exist, I don't think, anymore, but and then you got to get a ride. Who wants to go? Can we get to the earlier one? Do you want to go to the diner first? Maybe we can sneak into the diner afterwards, and because everyone likes to talk about their movies and stuff after they see them, and movie phone and all of that. And then I remember going online in the late 90s, and it kind of felt a little advanced, but still no assigned seats, still none of that. Right. You kind of had to go and wait in the line. It really was a really interesting experience. And I was just reflecting to someone recently where things are changing in every respect so rapidly that feels like it was 100 years ago, but it really wasn't 100 years ago at all. It was my childhood. It was my teen years. I lived at the fucking movie theater when I was in high school. So what do you remember about those auspicious planning days when you had to kind of, it was like almost like a general, or, you know, it's like Band of Brothers when they're in like some abandoned house and they roll out a map and they're like, you know, it's like, that's kind of the way it was.
Absolutely. You know? Moving the pieces around with your stick. Yeah. Do we go to Patchogue or do we campaign to Brookhaven?
You move the campaign, you push them over to Brookhaven Multiplex.
But it's true. In those analog days, it was like an event. And it took time prior, as you guys are saying, you know, it took time prior to the movie, like a matter of hours, like figuring out, okay, like Back to the Future is playing in Patchogue at this time, but it's playing in Brookhaven at this time. Like this will give us, can we really get there in that time? If we wait to the Patchogue one, we could actually go out to eat prior, you know, beforehand. And it's the whole thing was like, I mean, I don't know. It was like, talk about the thrill of the chase, right? It's like the fact that it was a little more of a challenge, or required more work, and there was a payoff involved, kind of made it more fun in a way where it was super. It's like now it was like prior to COVID, you just go online, buy your ticket, you get there, you just go right in, just bypass the whole ticket counter, go right to the usher, he rips your ticket, you go right in the theater, get your snacks or whatever. You know, back then, especially as a kid, it was like it required planning. You might have been planning a day or two out. You know, be a couple, like on a Thursday, we're going to see this movie on Saturday. Let's get squared up with the Friday morning news day and see when this movie's going to be playing over the weekend. Maybe we go Saturday, maybe we go Sunday. Your whole weekend might have been sort of cut out around that. So it's really interesting, and it is crazy how much it's changed over the years, where, you know, where the whole process for it is just different than it used to be. But yeah, I guess that's nostalgia, you know, thinking back to like the way it was. And isn't it weird? Like it was so much more complex in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s, but it seemed easier in a way. It's really strange. Like it just seemed like things were simpler then, but it really wasn't simple then. It was actually kind of quite a lot of work when you wanted to see a movie.
It's like anything else. It's like people remark, I think I remarked, it's not even a unique tweet. I've said it before, but others have as well, is like, I even just think about like, and we've said it on the show, I think, like we used to answer the phone without not even knowing who was on the other end of it. You know, like it's almost impossible to believe.
Unbelievable.
That happened for like 100 years.
A long time.
And then suddenly, like I get nervous when I don't recognize the number and I just drop it. I would never answer the phone with a number I don't understand. In fact, I just have them dropped automatically if your number's not even saved in my phone.
Unbelievable. Or God forbid the doorbell rings. You know, what was that YouTube show where they're like, get the sword? The doorbell rings and you're like, who the hell could be ringing my doorbell? I don't understand. Like, what's happening right now? You know, a couple times a year.
I see that in the neighborhood, like little kids with their friends, and you know, it's like, man, I can't believe kids still do this. You know,
unbelievable.
But It's funny because you have a daughter who, well, you know, everyone's been isolated for a while, but she's, you know, she's a little bit of a socialite, I guess, and she's going to get back into things, into the swing of things this summer, I'm sure. What is their preparation like when they go to the movies? I mean, do they buy their tickets on an app and go?
You know what's funny? I mean, now my daughter's almost 14. She'll be 14 in less than a month, but I feel like the movies aren't a big part of their social thing. I mean, my daughter and her friends are lucky enough where, at least in the summertime, a lot of it centers around the beach because, you know, either a lot of these people have shore houses or their grandparents do. So they're down at the beach a lot, which, you know, they're really fortunate about. Or the mall a little bit is still a thing. Oddly, I took Lilia and her friend to the mall last weekend, and I actually sat in the parking lot and talked to Mom on the phone for an hour and a half. I didn't even go in, but I was really surprised by how crowded the mall was. There was a lot of people there, just judging from the parking lot. And then later talking to Lil and Julia and saying, like, was it crowded in there? And they were like, yeah, it was pretty crowded inside. And that's not even like the really big mall. That wasn't even King of Prussia Mall, which I'm sure is like super crowded still. So... But
people are eager. I think people are eager to get back out there right now.
Yes. They just want to get back to some sense of what we regarded as normalcy prior to COVID. You know, whether it's just going shopping or going to Main Street in your little artsy town, or whether some of us going to the movies. Colin feels a little differently about that. And a lot of people do. A lot of people are ready to kick movies to the curb. But yeah, for my kids, the movie thing wasn't really a social thing. And I could kind of understand that. We'll talk about that when we grew up going to the movies. We talk about our experiences, or, you know, socially with going to the movies and friends and everything. I can understand why it's not the most socially regarded thing for kids nowadays, because they don't really get to interact. You're sitting in the movie theater shoulder to shoulder watching something.
You're right, because people wrote in about it. I don't think I even took any of the questions about it because it's kind of obvious. It is interesting to talk about, but
yeah.
It's actually a incredibly antisocial thing to do. It's when you think about like going out with girls and all that. And it's like, why is this the place you want to go? It's almost a way to, in my mind, it's like very, I don't know, it's like almost like psychoanalyzing it, but it's almost like a way for young and inexperienced and nervous people to date without having to talk.
Yes.
You know, it's almost like you're around each other. You can kind of feel it out, hold hands, make out, all that, but you're not really like talking so much harder than that. And so I think it's a way for kind of kids to subconsciously avoid those things and kind of ease into it.
That's an awesome point, dude. Just break the ice slowly without the pressure.
Right. Without not even thinking about the individual person, but rather just or not the generation, but rather the period in which you are in your life. Yeah. Right. Yep. Like going to a movie with a girl today, it's like, I don't want to do that, you know, or like that's something you would do like with someone that you're really with and you don't care and you're just going, you know.
Absolutely.
I would never be like, let's go on a date to the movie theater. But that was what was happening back in the day. Now we didn't get anyone writing in about this, which I was surprised about, because I kind of want to expand on this a little bit, which was so we have this plan. You bring out Newsday. You look at the times. You go. You buy your ticket. Wait in line. But also, what about the calibration of getting there a little bit early for two reasons? Number one, you want to play maybe a little Street Fighter. You want to play a little arcade. You know, Mortal Kombat's there, whatever. And then number two, you know, you obviously have to get your food and settle in. So I always found that there were different types of people, still are to this day, like where people will go like at the last second and get into the movie theater, right? And I like getting there and settling in and like being like, all right, I'm a little less nervous about everything now. But I remember calibrating my time both before and after movies to play video games. Was that a part of your experience too?
Huge, especially in junior high and high school. You know, we had a really interesting thing with Brookhaven Multiplex where we grew up, Kyle, on Long Island, because it seemed like for not just us, but people in our sphere in neighboring school districts as well, like it was the mall during the weekend days. That was sort of like the social center of everybody's thing. And then it was the movie theater, specifically Brookhaven Multiplex, probably the Comac Multiplex if you were closer to the center of the island. But for us, it was Brookhaven Multiplex where it was like weekend nights. That's where everybody went. Like your parents dropped you off there and maybe you didn't even see a movie. I mean, it was almost like mall-esque in that regard. Like you got dropped off there and it was literally packed. That place had a huge lobby. It was packed shoulder to shoulder with junior high and high school kids just hanging out. And it was kind of exotic because it was like the mall. It was like a place where you could meet girls, you could meet boys, you could meet kids from other school districts. And the video games are a big center of that too. Specifically, I remember for us, it was the Konami multiplayer, the 4-person arcade Ninja Turtles game, and then later on the Simpsons game. The huge things where we would go that was a big part of it for us. It was like you would go and play the games, try to meet girls. And again, maybe 50% of the time, not even see a movie. Because you meet somebody, you get a phone number, maybe you got lucky that night, you get a phone number, you meet somebody in a neighboring school district. Because again, like I went to school, you had a little bit of a different experience with school, Kyle, which I kind of admire in many ways. But I went to school, public school, with the same kids, K through 12. By the time we were in junior high or middle school, we were over each other. Everybody was. I remember that attitude of like, I talk about it sometimes on the show, but it's not even being funny. Like girls literally rolling their eyes at me, just looking at me. I didn't even do anything. I'm just sitting there. You know what I mean? They're just tired of looking at me because some of these girls I dated back to kindergarten with and maybe preschool. So we were just over each other. So I think a lot of it was, the possibility of meeting girls or boys from other school districts. It was just like you finally had the opportunity to do that. So the movie thing was like huge, really kicked off for me, prior as being a kid, it was important for different reasons. But starting around junior high and all the way through high school, probably, it had that sort of social importance for us where it was like, that was a place we went, we were there every weekend. That was our haunt, weekend in, weekend out, all year long. And you know what the other interesting part of this conversation is, Kyle, before I forget to say it? It's amazing to me too, that the movie theater isn't more important to my kids because things haven't changed that much from the 70s insofar as those places we could go for entertainment or just to chill or, just to go on the weekends and decompress. It's the same stuff, right? We have movies, we have bowling, we have mini golf. In the spring, mini golf when it's warmer out, maybe batting cages are thrown into the mix, whatever. We have paintball now, which is maybe something in the last 20 years or so. But with the exception of very few additions, I think about this a lot in the summertime going down to the shore points. It's like mini golf, mini golf, mini golf. It's amazing. Somebody hasn't thought of something new as like, in addition to mini golf, can we do something else? Now, more recently, we have the weird things like the hatchet throwing thing where people could go throw hatchets when they drink and stuff like that. But for the most part, especially for kids, once you grow out of that Chuck E. Cheese phase, which is soon going to be gone, and Bounce U and Sky Zone and like the trampoline parks and stuff. Once you get out of that phase, it's like you have movies and malls and bowling. My daughter already thinks bowling is gross, so that's out. You know what I mean? And God forbid she should be seen with her family mini golfing. So it's like movies and malls. It hasn't changed since the 70s. It's amazing. So I think losing that is going to be weird for kids because what are they going to do for social activities? We talk about them being up in their smartphones all day anyway. I mean, I think that's going to even worse than that. That's a whole nother conversation.
Until we get our heads-up displays, and then we won't even be on the phones, and we'll just be able to see them in our eyes.
Good
which
point.
I don't think is very far away.
Implants and all that.
Yeah, I don't think that's very far at all.
I don't think so
either. Yeah, it's interesting. With Brookhaven Multiplex, it's funny because my greatest memories of that place is the front, part of it. Because it was so huge before you even went back behind, like you said, the ropes. And I always remembered like there was a lot of interesting things where there was like the counter that was only open when it was really busy.
Yes.
Or like there was all these little things, and the video games were tucked in like the upper left corner. I also remember your famous move and a lot of people's famous move, which I adopted later, which was when you were done, you go to the payphone to call your parents and you call collect, and then you just say as much as you can
within that time,
within the 1.5 second, right? So for people that don't know, because this is something I think we have to explain. There used to be a thing called collect calling. I think you could still do it, but you used to press like 0, or later on it was like 1-800-collect and other things. And then it's a way to call someone and they're charged for it. So if you're on like a payphone in the pre-cell phone or like the infancy of cell phones, that was kind of how people got in touch with each other. But when you would call someone, it would be like it would ring and it would be like, you have a collect call from Dagan. And then you would accept it or not. And so what people used to do is, and Dagan used to do this, I remember it so well, because then you'd have to like relay word. Whoever answered the phone would have to tell whoever, So it'd be like, you have a collect call from, hey, it's Dagan, the movies are right. And then it's like, and like you would try to like, decipher it and then pass that information along, so you didn't have to pay the 25 cents to actually make a real phone call or whatever, because then you wanted the quarter to go play, you know, TMNT or whatever you wanted to play, Simpsons. So I remember that so fondly too. The movie theater reminds me of payphones and collect call scheming and all of that. So I love that part of it too.
That's awesome. That's so great. You know what's so funny about that? I didn't think about talking about that, but the other thing, this is how we would like amuse ourselves and pacify ourselves when we were kids. I can't even imagine kids having to do this now without having like their little supercomputer in their face all the time, their little pocket-sized supercomputer. We used to do the thing. Do you remember this, Kyle? So being at the movie theater, you had some money for video games. Maybe you were seeing a movie. Maybe you weren't. Trying to meet people. Maybe it was getting boring. It wasn't working out that night. We would do this trick where we would make the payphone ring. And then we would go hide and somebody would answer the phone. And the whole joke was, oh my God, they answered the phone when no one's on it. Like, dude, we would do that. I'm not even exaggerating. We would do that for an hour straight. You know, and the whole joke was there's no one's going to be there, you know. And I went and researched how to do it. And I couldn't find it. I found one for England, the way it would work on an English phone. But I couldn't find the one that we did. But I seem to recall it was something with 660, and then you did the last 4 digits of the payphone number, which was always posted up on each payphone. And then you would press the thing down before hanging up. So you kind of would deaden the call before hanging up. And then if everything clicked right, if it was frame perfect, it would ring, and then you would run away, and somebody would go pick it. You know, some idiot would go pick up a ringing payphone. I don't know, you know, who does that in the first place.
It's like an action movie or something, or on like Colin right, Farrell exactly. and pay booth or phone booth, whatever it's called. Yeah, because it's because I remember being able to make phones ring by simply calling them, you know, because they would have the number up.
Right, of course.
And I remember at some point in the 90s that they eventually started, I think, getting rid of the numbers, like because people used to basically also just use the collect call thing and try to get the number. And so you would call the phone back or just spend like a dime and just be like, call me back at this number. And then the payphone would ring. So I remember like spending the dime and being like, what's the number? And then you would do that and then call the payphone and then you just walk away, you know? Just leave the phone off the hook or whatever. It was very weird. Like it was I mean, there are things I don't know about. I always joke around. Do you know who Jojo Siwa is?
Yeah, of course.
So I had no idea who this person was. All I kept seeing was the name over recording. I'm like, who the fuck is Jojo Siwa? And then I look it up and it's like this world famous, like bananas, hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm like, so clearly there's things I don't know, but, and things that people deal with today that I'm unaware of, but I do feel bad that there's these more analog tricks that aren't being used, because what you guys were probably doing, you think about the phone delivery or the phone technician going, there were probably all of these really basic analog codes that they had to use to test things.
Yes.
When they would go and they'd be like, how to make the phone ring back to make sure it works. And then,
exactly.
And so people figure someone's dad probably worked there. They told them that, and then it spread, you know, over 25 years or whatever around Long Island.
I love it. I miss it so much. Yeah. It's like arcade rumors back then. You didn't have the internet.
It's like the girl that blasted herself with a hot dog. You know, no one knows who that girl is, but everyone knows the rumor.
Every school had one. Yeah. Every school had one. The hot dog girl got pregnant. Does everybody understand that now? Does everybody get it?
It's like some sort of parable. I don't understand. You know, it's like some sort of like Greek parable. I don't understand what it is. All right. There's a bunch of other stuff here that we have to get into. And I'm really... All right, so I'm interested in this. So let's go here. This is where we should go next.
Okay.
Chris Fazio wrote in and said, greetings from Long Island.
Hey, Chris.
It seems like there have been quite an expansion in the food and beverage options available in theaters over the last several years. Mm-hmm. I personally prefer to keep it simple with popcorn, soda, and a box of Bunch of Crunch. But in more recent years, I've seen theaters that have bars in the lobby or even options to order full meals like cheeseburgers that can be delivered right to your seat. That's my kind of shit. My question for both of you is this. What are your go-to options for food and drink when you're at the theater? Keep up the good work. I hope we'll be able to get back to the movie theater soon rather than later here on Long Island. I'm finding that most of them still have not reopened since I imagine the current capacity restrictions in place are not financially feasible.
Yeah, dude.
Now there's a, well, do I want to go into this one? Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have to say, this is just kind of a compliment to that. CJ Hines wrote in and said, hey guys, going to the theater, regardless of the movie, is probably my favorite thing to do. It's been a bummer that the past year has robbed me of the movie-going experience. Is it just me, or is the combination of Coke and popcorn a potent one for the stomach?
Oh, it's potent,
my friend. It's too good to pass up, though. It really is. All right, so Dave, let's talk about hot dog or foods. Someone wrote. I want to talk about hot dogs in a little while because I have a problem with that. But what is your go-to for the movie theater? Because I feel the same. If I'm going to like a basic movie theater, I really do want like a big popcorn and Coke.
Yes.
That's what I'm really wanting. And it does hit differently. It's interesting. It's what people always say about McDonald's Coke and stuff. The syrup is just different in these places, but you can't replicate popcorn for some reason the way it is in the movie theater. It's just not possible. And I love the crazy ass shit that I make people do with the popcorn too, where like, you know, you want butter on top, but what I like to do, I learned this from watching someone else do it.
Okay.
Ahead of me once. Is like, you know, they give you a bag of popcorn. I'm like, no, put in like a fourth and then put the butter in.
Oh.
Then put in another quarter, then put the butter in.
They'll do that?
And then there was a place in San Francisco where I'd even get cups of butter and then I'd be able to dump it as I was going. But they're right. It does make me feel like I'm going to fucking die when I get out of there, but it's so good. But anyway, what is your go-to for food and drink?
You know what's just occurring to me? We've talked about mayonnaise. You know, Colin's a big mayo fan. I like mayo, but you can't, too little, not enough flavor. Too much mayo. I mean, I'm talking about an ounce more than necessary. I'm disgusted by mayo, and I'm the same with popcorn butter. I have to have the popcorn butter, but if you put too much on there, I'm going to get disgusted with it. So there's a very appropriate balance for me with those two things. But you're absolutely right. There's no proxy for movie theater popcorn. There's only movie theater popcorn, and that's it. So movie theater popcorn is a mainstay. It's a must. Now, we've talked about this before. It's come up before on the pod, but I was shown by my teachers, mom and dad, how to bring contraband into the movie theater. Okay. They weren't trying to buy too much popcorn, you know, the marked up popcorn, the marked up soda, and especially the marked up candy. So they were champions of even pre-dollar store now. This is how far we go back. Supermarket, hit the supermarket, get the boxes of Fiddle Faddle, right? Or Cracker Jacks, whatever it is. Bring everything, bring as much as you can into the theater. And I think back then we just weren't drinking. Because they weren't bringing drinks and they weren't buying drinks. So we were like, you know, we were parched by the end of the movie. There was like, you know, our tongue would be hanging, our throat was closing up. It was like, oh my God, can we just share a Coke type of thing? But now, even now, I call it the Five Below philosophy, where even us my family will hit the Five Below on the way to the movie theater. We'll get the candy, and you could get like the Haribo dollar bag of gummies, whatever gummies you want, the dollar bottle caps, Raisinets, whatever. Everything's like probably a quarter of the price of the movie theater, right? Get your drinks. Helene's got her big Coach bag or whatever. She puts the drinks in the candy.
If you have the woman with the bag,
all you got to do is buy the popcorn. Okay, so all you got to, because there's no proxy. Even if you could smuggle in the popcorn, it wasn't, you know, you weren't going to get the movie
Dad would
theater.
do, but yeah, you can't.
He would try. He would definitely try. Like, all right, you stuff this pocket with this much popcorn, this much popcorn. But the popcorn is the one purchase that's, you know, there's just no getting away from that in the movie theater concessions. But, you know, for me, I have another thing too. So the Five Below thing is a big thing for me that, you know, mom and dad showed me, and it makes sense. You know, especially also for variety. It's not just price saving. You go down the Five Below candy aisle, it's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory in there, man. As opposed to like maybe you have 10 Raisinets, Scoobers, Skittles, and M&Ms and a couple other things in the movie theater. So you get your druthers as far as variety goes when you hit the dollar store, you hit the supermarket, save a little money. But also I have a trick too. I did this thing for many years where it was like cherry Coke is like my favorite thing in the whole world. Fountain cherry Coke with ice, just the right amount of syrup, just like Colin thinks about regular Coke. I'm the big cherry, or Pepsi, I'm the big cherry Coke guy. What I would do is I would deprive myself of cherry Coke, and it would be a treat only for the movie theater. And I would literally avoid not buying it. Hot summer days, supermarket trips, I would never buy it. I would save that as a treat, beholden just to going to see the movie. So it was like an extra incentive to go see a movie in the theater. I'm going to get an ice cold cherry Coke. That was like my big thing. And so that was always a big thing for me too. So for me, it was always movie popcorn. Like Colin says, there's just no alternative. Got to have the movie popcorn, cherry Coke. And for me, it's gummies. I'm not, Helene laughs at me when I say this, but I really don't have a big sweet tooth for like cakes and candies in general and all that kind of stuff. But gummies, Haribo gummies, Black Forest gummy bears, and gummy Coke bottles. Forget about it. I could eat them. Dude, I worry myself when it comes to gummy Coke bottles because I just keep going. I would fill myself like to have them surgically removed.
Save some room for later, Augustus.
Exactly.
That's what you have to do.
So those are my big things. And then I think when I was younger, Raisinets, chocolate covered raisins, but I got to say, they kind of disgust me now. My palate has evolved beyond where do you stand on the Raisinette, Kyle? What do you think?
I don't do any of the candy stuff.
Nothing.
Nothing. No, not the movie. I like gummy bears, but you see, movie theaters don't. I really just want popcorn and Coke at a movie theater. And so that's actually what I was going to ask you about because, Adaholic wrote into us on Patreon about this. He says, simple question, Super M boys. Hot dogs at the movie theater? Yay or nay? I was always a nay until I discovered the ancient pretzel dog. And I've been converted to a believer. Pretzel dog and a small popcorn combo can't be beat.
Okay.
So he's talking about a hot dog on a pretzel bun, of course, which is great. And I do like that there's these different options, but I feel like some of it is getting a little carried away.
Okay.
I've always been fascinated. I mean, it's an older food that's always been there, but like nachos, it's like, when did someone say like, we're going to serve nachos in a movie theater? The crunchiest and most obnoxious food possible.
Good point.
I don't know that I've ever really been around someone eating nachos, but I feel like almost it's because people have to be self-aware enough to know, like, you really want to eat. Why don't you just open up a fucking bag of Lay's and just dig in?
Yeah.
If you're going to make that much noise. The reason popcorn and to some extent, I think, in candy in these ways is that they're a little quieter to eat. But I have to say, do you have any experience with the more boutique, like Alamo Drafthouse and that kind of stuff? Like what do you think of those kinds of movie theaters? The assigned seating, waiters, that kind of stuff.
I love it. Oddly enough, I've never been to an Alamo Drafthouse, which I feel really, really robbed because there's got to be some around here. For some reason, I just never been to one. Now, we had, when I lived up in Connecticut, I lived up in, suburban Hartford for a while. There was a little town called Winstead. It was a very post-World War II-esque town. I think it was an old steel town. It was on the river, really quaint. And they had that type of movie theater. I remember it was called the Gilson. I hope it's still there. But that was my first experience with going and having a meal and watching a movie. And they would do like second run movies. So like it would be like Something About Mary was out of the theater for a few months now. The Gilson would pick it up. They would show it. And then they would, you had a limited menu. It was sort of a lunch style menu. I remember it was a lot of sandwiches and stuff, burgers, also beer and some alcohol, some cocktail options. That was my first experience with that in my early 20s living up there. That was a lot of fun. And again, they would show the second run movies, so it was cheap. What else did we see? I think I saw American Beauty up there, which is an awesome movie. But that was cool. But I've never been to an Alamo. But I love what you say about nachos. I never thought of it that way. Not only are they messy, but that's really a table food. It's a messy thing to eat. They're noisy, like you said. A messy thing to eat. It requires dipping, so it requires some sort of vision to see what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Very strange movie theater food choice.
It is. I agree. I never really understood the logic behind it. What I really like, so Alamo is just, I was actually looking when you were talking to see, I thought they were much more distributed. They're really mostly still in Texas. I think the reason that I was so exposed to it is because there is one in San Francisco.
San Fran, yeah.
But there are other rivals that do the similar thing. And I was really into it because what I really like about at least Alamo, I think most of them are this way, is like they charge. Actually, people used to joke, it's cheaper to go to a movie at Alamo Drafthouse than it is to go to like AMC because they don't give a fuck about the movie. Go come see Star Wars for $6. It's like, once you sit down, you're a captive, and it's so cool. Like, I love it. You like write down what you want. You put it under this little light. They come and grab it. It's all real quiet. And
that's how it works.
Yeah. Like there's no communication. Like it's all done over paper. Like that's cool. Waiters like walk by, they look for there's like a marker, like you put on like a small light and then they come grab it and they bring you the food or the cocktail or the drink, the beer.
Of course. Cause you're watching a movie, so you can't be disturbed. That makes sense.
Right. Exactly. It's really quite cool. And, I prefer that because I like going out to eat, and so I feel like it's kind of just mixing up both things. It's like, all right, I'm
it's a
watching a movie while I'm eating. It's kind of killing two birds,
Yeah.
But I'm still gonna be mostly in the popcorn and Coke phase. I think when I go to these places.
What about hot dogs? Talk to me about the hot dog thing.
No, the hot dog thing is weird too because I like hot dogs, but I just with foods like that, I don't know how long it's been there.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't feel like. Places like Alamo Drafthouse make everything to order, so it's different. If you order whatever, you can order much more sophisticated things than hot dogs there. But yeah, it's like getting something at 7-Eleven where you're like, you don't really know what you're getting. I mean,
exactly.
This could be new. This buttered roll could be from today. It could be.
That's exactly
from
right.
Eons ago, I don't know. So
you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's a process. It's a processed food. Like a hot dog is going to take a long time to go bad. Days, actually.
Oh,
so it's just the fact of eating something old and not fresh. Very much like a 7-Eleven chili dog. Like you said, you don't know. Now, when I was a teenager, I had no problem going to 7-Eleven and getting a chili dog. But you get, your tastes get a little more refined as you get older, hopefully. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, Kyle, was about the pretzel dog. Now, I remember taking Lilia out to lunch all the time after preschool when she was really little. And we would go to an ice cream place that had pretzel dogs. So she could get ice cream, but first she could have a little lunch. And that was the first time I think the pretzel dog thing / pretzel bun for your burger started to kind of take off and become a thing. Now, you're a burger guy, too. Where do you stand on the pretzel, the pretzel dog or the pretzel bun for your burger? Where do you stand on that?
I love that. I love pretzel rolls.
Okay.
I don't know that I've said this so many times, but I don't feel like you need to do too much to a burger, But I feel like pretzel rolls for sandwiches or even like just like cold cuts is really good. Pretzels are just so good.
They're so good.
And like frozen pretzels and all of that. And whoever was the genius that tried to meld these two things together finally for us deserves accolades, because for some reason, it wasn't that obvious. I mean, when I was a kid, there wasn't pretzel rolls. I mean, no one was doing this. It's the same thing with potato rolls, where they're so good. Martin's potato rolls. You and I are both big fans of those.
Big fan.
It's like, why isn't everyone making these? But it's just only Martin does it the right way. I don't want any of the other stuff, so
don't mess with Martin. They're too good.
It's funny too, Dig, because there are these other, these other kind of things in the movie theater going phase as you observe as you're younger. One of them actually always bothered me. I'm so glad that Chris P wrote in about this. It's similar to what happens with the food, I guess, when you're done. It says, "Hello, brothers. I hope you are both well. I first heard this question posed during a Mega 64 podcast, and it's stuck with me to this day. Just knowing that there are people out there who do this really irks me. Do you think it's okay to leave your trash in and around your seat for the crew to clean up after a movie is finished? In my opinion, your trash should be taken with you during your exit and placed into the conveniently provided trash receptacles. The other side of the argument was that the crew is going to clean the theater anyway, so what's the difference if you leave the trash or just take it with you? Seems like someone who would do this is just lazy and making the employee's job more difficult. If I saw a friend do this, I would silently judge them the way I do when I hear someone come out of the bathroom without washing their hands." I totally agree. I've always been puzzled by this too, because there is this argument. I watch, as I've said before, Cart Narcs, right? Which is this awesome YouTube channel where they just narc out people for not returning their carts. And the argument is often like the cart return is right there,
Absolutely.
And it's a similar thing here where just because you have people cleaning up, it's like it would basically be like saying in New York City, they street sweep on Tuesdays and Fridays. So I'm just going to throw everything in the street because someone does it, just because someone is cleaning it doesn't, or can clean it, doesn't mean that they should necessarily clean it. And what is the big deal about just taking your shit with you? I'm persnickety like that. And I've even been talking around my neighborhood, which is brand new and really nice.
Yeah.
There's still, just because of the construction crews and everything, there's like garbage kind of piling up on the roads and stuff. And I've been talking about going and cleaning it up myself, like just walking around and doing it myself, because I'm like, clearly no one else is going to do it.
Right.
So,
and it bothers you.
The aforementioned HOA is certainly not going to do it. So, so anyway, where do you stand on this? Because this is one of those silent judging things, no doubt about it. And I can only assume the people who know it the most are those who have actually worked in a movie theater.
Yeah, that it reminds me of this conversation I heard recently on Rogan. I forget what comedian Joe had on, but they were talking about Jerry Seinfeld. And they were talking about one of the darkest routines, and I think it's a relatively new bit that Jerry Seinfeld does, where he talks about, now maybe it's not, maybe it's an older bit, but they talk about a bit where they thought it was really dark and telling about the person, where Jerry does this whole thing about, I paid $10 for this popcorn. I paid $10 for this movie. I paid for the candy. I paid for the kids. I paid for my wife. By the time we got done with this movie, it's like $150. I'm leaving my garbage here and you're picking it up. Right? Like this dark sense of entitlement. Honesty, right. Give him a nod for honesty, tip your cap.
Right.
But the whole thing about like, I paid for you to clean this up. And he was, he's at least, you think he's being serious when he's doing this whole bit, when he's doing this.
Sounds
routine.
Like something he wouldn't say. So
yeah, you know what I mean?
He's a little arrogant, he's like, yeah.
Definitely. Absolutely. He definitely has that arrogance. He definitely has that brutal honesty aspect to him. And it reminds me of that bit. But yeah, like you say, like you're going in that direction anyway. Like you're supposed to, sometimes the ushers will have open garbage bags, you know, and they'll just be standing there. And I guess that's to encourage the human element of like, here we are. These are the people, we're the people that have to clean up this theater. So can you please throw your thing in here? But at least those cans are on the way out, you know, so you just take your stuff and you throw them out. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, can you think of anything more disgusting than the interior? I don't know if you've ever had the tragedy of seeing what the interior of a movie theater looks like with the lights on, but it's fucking gross, dude. And you can tell just from the stickiness of the floor. And you know, they're always, not always, but many theaters, especially the newer, more contemporary things that are built since the 80s, they're carpeted in the area of, you know, walking in and walking up the aisles, but they leave like a concrete floor, uncarpeted floor for where the mess is going to be, where people are going to spill soda and drinks and popcorn and all that kind of stuff. And you could tell just without seeing it, like the soles of your sneakers are sticking to that. It's so disgusting, dude.
It's gross. No, it's gross.
It's so gross. It's so
gross.
Know,
I've been to boisterous, wild Jets and Islanders games that are less disgusting.
Good point.
Than a movie theater.
Think of Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly right. Going to Yankee Stadium, and it's like, it's not, I would argue Yankee Stadium, especially the new one, it's like cleaner. You know, I don't understand why the argument to me about like, well, you do this, so it's going to be done is such a bad argument. It's such a fallacious and stupid argument, because it's basically like saying like, oh, I'm a writer and someone's going to edit it, so everything I write is completely illegible. So because your job is to make it legible,
it's the editor's job,
and make it make sense.
Right.
So I'm just going to shit out some words and then you put them together. It doesn't really make any sense. It's much like everything, with just a little bit of personal responsibility and normalcy and self-respect, things would be much different in the movie theater. But it just can't be that way. It's the same thing. I'm not a driver of cars, I know, but the fact that there's even traffic bothers me, because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that there's traffic. Right. Like everyone should just be yielding and merging and paying attention and not cutting people. Yeah. It's like, it shouldn't matter how much of a volume there is if everything is just moving. Right. But the more you get people involved, the more fucked up it is until it stops moving. And for some reason, that's just the human condition. And I don't quite understand it. It bothers me, like even a couple of my neighbors, with all the shit blowing around my neighborhood right now, because all the builders are kind of wrapping up. It's like, I pick the garbage up when, you know, there's a piece of plastic on my my lawn or whatever, but like some of my neighbors just like, it's like no one cares. No one takes pride.
I feel the same way.
It's very weird. Take pride in yourself.
Take pride in it, dude. I saw, this is a little bit departure, but I have to talk to you about it because you'll be fascinated if you don't know about this, and our listeners too, watchers, I should say. So Helene and I and Graydon are taking a walk this morning, and you know, we live in a nice house, a nice neighborhood, but if you go outside of our development and just walk up the rural street that sort of connects our neighborhood to the main roads, there's another sort of development in the back with like, I don't know if you've ever been back there, Kyle, but the houses are like 6,000 square feet. I mean, it's nice. Like, they're gorgeous. I mean, these are gorgeous houses, borderline mansions, and there's actually a lot of them, but they're spread out. They're all on like an acre, and it's just gorgeous neighborhood. So we're walking by, and there's a bunch of hills dividing the street, so you can't really see into, for privacy, you know, shrubs and hills that they have there. And I see a guy in the backyard. He's picking up dog poop in one of the backyards, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And the backyards are huge, you know. I'm watching this guy, and I'm thinking, okay, it must be the homeowner lets his dog run around, and then, you know, that's it. You know, he goes out there occasionally and picks up the dog poop. Okay, nothing out of the range of normalcy. We're walking back, and there's a truck pulling out of that neighborhood, and it's like a dog poop removal service. Helene's like, what the hell is that? And it's like a truck. It's like a van, like you would see a contractor van, like a plumber, but it has this logo on the side. And it's like dog do removal service or whatever. And I'm realizing these people pay somebody to come up and pick the dog shit up in their backyard. I never heard of this in my life. Now, I've been living in these suburbs I've been in the suburbs most of my life. I've been in these suburbs for a long time. Never seen this. Okay. So have you ever heard of this?
No, I mean, there's a business for almost anything. I guess it shouldn't be too surprising, but when I think about it, I'm like, I just walk around my own backyard and pick up the poop. It's like, it's not that big. It takes 5 minutes a week. That's what I was saying to Helene.
I said, how do they check? Now, if you're going to go outside and check that these people got the dog poop, then either these people could just make a killing and not do anything, or if these people check, why not just go out there with the pooper scooper and do it yourself? You're making the rounds anyway.
Yeah, dude, I literally just walk, like, when like someone is murdered or missing and they like people walk through fields and I like walk up and like do little grids back and forth to make sure I don't miss anything.
Lines of deputies. Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean,
that's funny.
That's the other thing, dude, is that I have cameras now, so I'm definitely going to be looking, but someone let their dog poop on my lawn like a month or so ago and then pick it up. I don't care if you poop on my lawn, but it's like,
no, unacceptable.
What? And then I'm seeing it around my neighborhood where like people just let their dogs, and I'm like, no. Like no, you know, so I don't want to be a NIMBY. But I will be if this proceeds, especially because we've all paid so much money to live here. And it's the same thing. Like I noticed one of my neighbors, like in another road.
Yeah.
When I walk the dog, like there's like these strips of like dirt next to everyone's like driveways. And this one guy just like has tons of weeds growing in it. And then winter came and the weeds just died. So now and it's like, you're not going to just like, don't you care?
Right.
You know, this looks like shit.
Yeah.
It probably would take you 5 minutes or less to fix this.
Right.
You know? Like, especially because they're all dead now. I don't. And meanwhile, like one weed is popping up and I'm like pulling it out immediately. Like, I can't be having this. So
well, you're fastidious. Yeah. But that's like a job that is going to take maybe a minute. Like leaving a knocked over trash can on the side of your house for years. Like, can you just pick it up? Just pick it up. I don't want to see it like settling deeper into the ground. Just pick up the friggin' thing.
There's a guy. Dude, there's a guy in my neighborhood. Micah makes fun of me because it makes me so mad. There's like a guy who already started building an extension behind his house. Like these houses are all brand new. Yeah. So that's fine. Like, okay, he wants, but then at some point just stopped. And so like, and it's been months and there's just the siding behind the extension is not done. And then there's just a ladder. It's like standing next to it. And it's just been there for months.
Oh, that would drive me mad.
And I'm like, what are you? And it's also a corner house. And I'm like, what are you doing? Just move the ladder. And also it's like, there's so little siding left to be done where I'm like, just finish the siding. Dude, it is so, I don't want to take a picture of it because it's obviously someone's private house, but it's like, it's comical how much is left to be done. And it's just not done. And the guy's ladder just stands there. And I'm like,
what could be the story there? What could possibly be the story there?
I don't know. Maybe he ran out of money or something. I don't know. I couldn't notice like, it was just like, I don't know. I'm like so obsessed with my house. Like I'm trying to, like you said, fastidiously take care of it. And I just can't imagine just, I don't know, not doing that. But anyway, we're getting off topic. As we often do.
as is our want.
So there are a couple other things that we have to touch on here. One of them is, and we talked a little bit earlier, is kind of the nature of dating at movie theaters and all of that, and how that you integrate a boy or a girl into that. And Nat Patterson wrote into us and said, hey boys, a bit of a cheeky one. Have you ever had a sexual experience in the movie theater? So I won't go, I've never had a sexual experience in the movie theater. I myself had a few escapades in the far back corner during high school. Specifically, I remember seeing the horrendous American Idol knockoff movie American Dreams with my then girlfriend, quickly losing interest in what's on screen and becoming very interested in fooling around with her. No need to share or read the question out if you don't want to broach the subject. But I can't wait and wonder if anyone else got up to mischief under the glow of the silver screen.
Nice.
Stay safe and be well. Yeah, no, I mean, of course.
That's a great subject.
This is incredibly germane to what we're talking about.
You naughty thing.
Now, I've never had like a sexual experience in a movie theater. No. I didn't go to those kinds of movie theaters.
The raincoat crowd?
Yeah, exactly. Whacking off in the back of a movie. I never understood. I still don't really understand. I can't even get into it because it's so hard for me to even fathom what's going on in these places.
I have no idea how that goes on.
Like when Pee Wee Herman was arrested for masturbating in one of them. And that was really, as a kid, even I was like, what? Like, what? And I'm 36 now and I still don't understand it. No. Like what the hell happened?
Oh my God.
But yeah, of course, like going in my high school girlfriend and, you make out. And of course, just like even figuring out, like, do you hold hands and you put your arm around them? And it is quite the thing. It's quite, it's almost like watching like a flamingo or a peacock do their ritual dance. You don't really know, what you're doing. And like we said, it's in the dark. You can't really talk. And then I remember like especially late in high school when I started seeing some girls that were not from Bellport and like you would never see them again. Basically you'd like date them twice and like make out in the movies. And I don't even remember, like I remember that happening a couple of times where like, I don't even know who this person was.
That was the thing.
So talk to me a little bit about your rendezvous.
That's so funny that you just said that because it occurs to me that the story I'm going to tell, the girl who I dated for a brief time, I actually met at the movie theater at Brookhaven Multiplex. And I think every time I saw her, 90% of the time I saw her was at Brookhaven Multiplex. Our entire relationship was centered around Brookhaven Multiplex. Like that was the entire
really
setting.
Know if she'd never ever left. You know, she might have always been there.
She may have lived there. And this was also the girl, I remember Tiffany, shout out to Tiffany, I don't know her last name, but she was the girl who thought my name was Danny, that I dated for a short time, but 2 or 3 months, because I got tired of correcting her. You know, that when we first met, it was very loud in the lobby of Brookhaven Multiplex, busy Saturday night or whatever, and trying to introduce myself and get her number, and she's like, I'm saying Dagan, and she's saying Danny, and I'm like Dagan, and she's like Damon, and finally it landed on Danny, and I was like, yeah, that's my name. And she would call the house looking for me as Danny, and I went as Danny, and Uncle Mike found out, and the whole bit, where where he was over and answered the phone when she called one time. But that was the only time I remember actually meeting a girl on a date to go to the movie. I remember it was Karate Kid 3, so that must have been 1989, I guess. I must have been in 9th grade, I want to say. And it wasn't just me and her. It was me and a group of my friends, 2 or 3 friends, her and a group of her friends, and we went to the movie theater. And it was the whole thing where it was like Karate Kid 3 sucked. You know, it was nowhere near my beloved Karate Kid 1 or even Karate Kid 2. We talked about Karate Kid 3 on the podcast.
Yeah, we'll revisit and do those movies better.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. Especially Karate Kid 3, because it's so campy. But I remember it being like, yeah, like I just kind of wanted to watch the movie, and it was a distraction. I wanted to have fun with my friends, and it felt like pressure. It felt like, all right, I'm on this date with this girl. I got to be sociable. I got to be conversational, but we're trying to watch a movie. It was weird, and I remember making out with her, and that was awkward because other people were around. You know, my friends were there. Her friends were there. I was young. I was still kind of relatively new to that whole thing. So like making out with a girl in the movie theater, that was the only, and you know, the whole bit with putting, working up the courage to put your arm around her. It was like everything you've seen dating back to movie and TV content from the 50s. It was just like that, you know, Happy Days or anything else. Doing an 80s movie, a John Hughes flick, whatever. It was like that same thing. It was one and done for me because I hated it. You know what I mean? It was like, and she was really cute. I really liked her. But again, it was like, that was my only really dating or making out experience that I could recall in a movie theater, because I just felt like the movies isn't really a place for this. I felt like I was really comfortable, and I think we were really lucky my age, like Gen Xers, because house parties were such a huge thing. Probably kicked off for us in 7th grade and never really stopped all through high school, especially when you're mobile. Get a little older, 16, 17, you drive, you have friends that drive, you could go to house parties all over the place. Just didn't have to be in just your school district or just your school. So I felt like house parties was a little more, you know, sort of worked better for that, you know, hanging out with girls or making out or kind of escaping and being by yourself, being, being private, maybe getting in a bedroom or something. But the movies just, you know, that was just, it felt like something, you know what it felt like? It felt like something because we grew up watching movies and TV shows. It felt like something we had to do. It was like a rite of passage. You know, it's like, I have to do this because Richie Cunningham did this, you know.
Yeah. Hey,
or Kevin Arnold.
It's not Richie, but yeah. For some reason, Potsy was always my favorite, which I don't even understand because he was like the worst one in hindsight.
I don't know how to describe Potsy. Like
he was just boring. He was just
like another dude.
Yeah, he was just because Ralph had obviously his thing, and Richie's the protagonist, and Fonz is the 35-year-old high school student, and then you have.
That's a great point. What was Potsy's thing?
I think he might have been like the student athlete. Right?
Maybe.
Yeah, like because I think he had a Letterman jacket.
Yes, he always wore that blue Letterman jacket. It seemed like. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a great show. All right, how about this one? I do want to. Oh, you know what? This is an interesting one. Sarah Emery wrote into us.
Hey, Sarah.
She said, "Oh, hold on a second, Dave. I'm going to put Rush downstairs." Hold
okay. Rush wanted to chime in on the festivities.
I know.
Want to see a couple of ninjas? Yellow ninja, white ninja. Oh, wait, what's that guy have? He has size and he has nunchucks. See how I entertain you guys with Colin? I'm showing them my ninjas.
Sorry.
Just showing them my ninjas here.
Oh, very nice.
Little ninjas.
Yeah, Rush is just such an attention whore. He just barks to get everyone's attention, and how to put him downstairs.
He has a very like appealing yap, though. It's not annoying. It doesn't seem annoying.
It's funny because he kind of speaks, you know, like he has a different language. At least I can understand it in some way. Like he whines and he's just really crazy.
Depending on what he wants or what his emotion is at that point.
Yeah. And he's so spoiled because he's just around us all the time.
Yeah.
So,
you're always there.
So he can be a little annoying. But anyway, Sarah Emery wrote in and said, "Hey guys, long-time listener, first-time commenter. I'm sorry.
Hey,
I have
welcome.
welcome. Definitely. I have many fond memories of my older brother, by 9 years, taking me and my siblings to the movies almost any time a new release was in theaters. While most of the experiences were totally positive, some of the times I remember best were those moments that something went wrong. One in particular was when we saw Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and about 20 minutes in, the picture flipped upside down randomly and we were told we wouldn't be able to finish the movie. While it didn't happen too often, I'll always remember that feeling of disappointment mixed with some excitement because while we didn't get to enjoy the movie, we usually got free vouchers for another day. Love the show, especially the new video format. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I mean, I cannot think of a worse movie. Great movie, great cast. Very confusing movie, even being right side up. So I can't even imagine a worse movie for that to happen during.
Yeah, it's funny because when she wrote in about this and I included it, and of course, I don't think that's a 70s movie. I don't think I've even ever seen it. But
was that a remake? That movie came out. I don't know. I don't have it.
Oh, the film adaptation. Oh, I'm thinking
2011.
I looked it up before.
Something.
It's a TV adaptation. Okay, no, there's a movie from.
It could be a remake.
2011. I see. Okay,
2011.
No, right, what's his name's in it from? Oh no, that's not him. Never mind. I thought it was the guy from Mad Men. Anyway,
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman's in it. Yes. I was thinking Lane was in it, but it's not him.
Yes.
So it's funny because I have this very specific memory. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because the only time I ever remember a movie shitting the bed was I saw Mission to Mars, which was like a 1999, 2000 era sci-fi movie.
Okay, and, I vaguely remember it.
And it just shat the bed, like the audio stopped and everyone was complaining and whining. But I remember it so well because I was crestfallen because they're like, oh, here's like a voucher to come see a movie later and all of that. And I'm like, but this sucks. I just saw the first 30 minutes of this movie. Right. So like, it's all getting into it now. Yeah. The movie shits out. And then you think I'm going to come back and see the rest of it. I want to see a movie now, you know? So I remember being so annoyed by that because it goes back to what we were saying before about the organization. Like I had to get a ride here. Like I had to ask for a favor and your voucher is good, but I just spent like half of my money
this
that I
took
even
work.
have. Like,
yeah.
And it was, so I remember being so disappointed by that. And I don't think I've ever seen the rest of that movie. And that was during the era when I would, as we were talking about, I think my era was probably from 1995 or 1996 until 2002, where I saw fucking everything that was in the theater, you know? And that was one of the few movies, like, so I would definitely go see a movie like that right away when I was a kid. But I remember I was with my friend Kevin, who I haven't seen since high school, but I remember we had to like just go pop into another movie because I'm like, well, I don't know, let's go see, you know, whatever
was playing
shit, you know? And for some reason I remember the day, it was like really overcast and I don't know, I have such a real memory of that because that was the only time I ever was in a movie that totally malfunctioned, like where I've been in a couple of movies where they had to restart them or and stuff like that. Or there's something cuts out and so they're like, all right, we'll go back to the beginning and just do it again. But that was the only movie where they're like, Mission to Mars is broken, you know?
Full rebate.
Yeah,
that was. But
it. I was so bummed because I was like, I don't care about this voucher. I'm here to see whatever stupid sci-fi movie I'm here to see this year.
Whatever it is. Yeah. So what was that pocket of time for you, Kyle, where you just went to see everything? 95.
Probably the mid 90s. Like like 7th grade to 12th grade. I would say something like that. Because I used to see everything. I mean, especially because Dad is also, as we've talked about, a prodigious movie viewer.
Yeah, he loves movies.
He used to love going to the movies. I don't know if he still does, but. And so we used to go all the time. I mean, we used to just go see random shit. And sometimes we would I remember very clearly him going and seeing something and I split off and went and saw Something About Mary. So we used to, and I think I was in 8th grade at that time. Something About Mary, definitely not appropriate for an 8th grader. Like with the cum shot thing and the,
it's pretty adult.
Like that. No, yeah, it's pretty vulgar. Very good movie. But, for me, I remember that so clearly because that was also how we used to explore. And this goes into a question we got. We have to bring this up. Jake Mady wrote into us and said, hey, C&D.
Hey.
Were either of you the mischievous sort that would hop theater rooms after viewing what you paid for? I never had the balls to do it in my younger years, but my fears found it to be a rite of passage. I don't know how doable this is anymore, but it was impossible not to get away with it when I was a kid. I don't even know how you would ever gotten caught. I mean, when you really think about Brookhaven Multiplex, right? I'll explain it to people. Big rectangular room in the front, huge, right? Like an auditorium. It's where you buy your tickets and all your stuff. And then there's like a roped off area that's all along the back, and it splits into two directions, right? Like a northwest and a northeast, let's say. Yeah. And there's just one guy checking your ticket, and then the bathrooms were right behind that guy. So everyone would kind of share this like common space behind the rope where you would go to the left, you'd go to the right. They'd be like, it's the theater, 2 to the left, whatever. And so, and when I was a kid, I'm like, I never got my ticket checked by anyone in the movie theater in my entire life until I was an adult.
No.
So I used to sometimes stay at the movies all day. There were times where I used to see 3 or 4 movies a day, because it goes back to the newspaper thing. What's the runtime? What's the time of the movie? The movie begins, right? It's like, all right, there's this movie at 2:10. It's 95 minutes. And then there's this movie. We'll miss the first 5 minutes, maybe the previews, and then we'll sneak in. I mean, we used to do that shit all the time. I saw many movies that way. Many movies that way. How about you, Dick?
It makes me so jealous. I knew this was going to come up, and I was always so afraid to do this. And it doesn't really make sense thinking back because, first of all, the ushers were your contemporaries in school, especially when you got a little older. They were either your friends or friends of friends, or at least kids your age. Even if the manager put them in charge of, make sure you check these guys' tickets, make sure they're in the right movie, or, make sure you walk the right of way down the aisle with your flashlight to make sure no one smuggles in contraband. Like, I've never gotten caught with contraband, and I've never seen anyone reprimanded or, for bringing in outside stuff into the movies or for sneaking into a theater ever in my life. I've never seen anybody get caught for either one of those things. And I remember the only time we did it, and I was really afraid. I had to be probably early in high school. I don't remember exactly when this movie came out, but I remember specifically it was Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. And I really wanted to see it. And I was at that age where horror was freaked me out, but my curiosity was always piqued, especially with the mainline horror films like Friday the 13th and Nightmare, Freddy Krueger. I just wanted to see them. I liked kind of scaring myself. And we went to see, I don't know what movie it was, Ernest Scared Stupid or something. And then after that, we snuck in to see Nightmare, like almost from the beginning. I think we got there like a few minutes late. And I remember being really nervous, like checking over both my shoulders. Like it was ridiculous. Like what was going to happen, So that was really the only time I ever did that. Now, in my older years, I would go in, like if we were waiting for a movie, I notoriously get to a movie very early. So I would go in and, stick my head in on whatever movie was playing just to, sit there for 5 minutes.
That's another dad move.
Oh, yeah. And I think he was the one too, like totally didn't discourage that. Like maybe even encouraged it.
No,
like,
no. It doesn't matter. I think I learned it from him.
From him, right?
I think we might have even done that stuff together. Like where it was like, where we would plan out, like he wants to go see this and this. I want to see this and this. They're at these different times. We'll see you later. We both go and and go see the movies and then reunite 5 hours.
Oh,
we
that's
definitely
awesome.
did stuff like that. Yeah,
that's
we definitely
fantastic.
did stuff like that. Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, because you were right in that wheelhouse age-wise to be doing that kind of stuff with him, and just living with him at the time too. That's so funny. I really regret not doing that more, only because it would have been fun, and I would have saw more movies. What I mean?
It's wrong. I mean, I'm a 36-year-old man now. I'm not going to do that now, but it's stealing. When you're poor as a kid, I don't give a shit.
Right.
It's. I don't know that I necessarily hurt anyone, but it's theft. I mean, it's not something to necessarily be proud of. It's just a funny story. I don't begrudge anyone doing it. I think it's just a lot harder now because as an adult, I've noticed like people do check like your stubs when you go in, especially for R-rated movies. And but as a kid, I was just like, I don't understand what everyone's so like, or not everyone, but like, what are people so afraid of? Like, you can do whatever you want. I used to straight up go see R-rated movies by simply buying tickets for another movie. I mean, I used to do that all the time.
Right. You could do it.
Me and my friends used to go see every R-rated movie that came out. We would just be like, oh, there's a Pixar movie. Let's just go get tickets for that. And then we'll just walk beyond the rope and then we'll go to the other movie. Yeah.
Great point. No one checked.
Don't give a fuck.
No one checked.
And I think it's because it's the we obviously got a lot of people writing in for assigned seats, and I love assigned seats because it takes so much of the stress out for someone like me.
Yeah.
And it's not possible to do that anymore. Because of that in some assigned seat movies, and obviously because of the computer age. I mean, another thing, Dig, is like the sellout stuff. When a movie would sell out, I think it was kind of like approximate, because now it can say like, we know we sold 85 tickets, and I'm sure that there's some sort of analog machine where they knew and all of that. But
yeah,
I just feel like when you looked around a big movie theater, when you'd see a big action film and there were people sitting on the floor, it's like, well, obviously some people don't belong in this movie theater, so I always loved that. And I always wondered, it is interesting, like how much, I wonder what the percentage of box office gross was from movies that were purchased just to see another movie. Like it's almost untrackable, right? You think about like really big R-rated like hit movies.
Yeah. And
you're like, wow, this movie actually probably did even better than this. This is actually the lowest it could have done, because certainly people like me bought tickets to Shrek so we can go see it, And then you think about the G movies, and then you think about the G movies or the PG movies and how much better they might do than they really did based on people buying. I'm sure it's not very much, but a fraction of a percentage or something. But it would be interesting to know, because
that's a great point. It could have an effect for sure.
I was quite the cinephile back then.
You saw a lot of things. I remember, Kyle, before, pre-multiplex, this is going way back, when a movie theater would only accommodate maybe 2 or 3 theaters. And certain ones still existed, after the multiplex thing started to take place. But, where there's nothing worse, like in my memory, than a crowded movie theater where you're packed in like sardines, shoulder to shoulder, every seat taken.
I hate it.
The multiplex really ushered in a whole nother era where that wasn't a thing. Like you said, there might be 4 movie theaters dedicated to one blockbuster movie, maybe more than that. If they had 12 theaters, there might have been 4 on each of those branching sides. So 8 of those total 12 at any time could just, accommodate 8 showings of that movie. It always reminds me of like back in the home video days with Blockbuster, the new release wall. Like you could go in the Blockbuster on a Friday night, they could have 80 copies of a movie and they're all rented out. Yeah,
it was amazing. Like you almost felt it walking in. You're like, it's too late. It's 8:30. This movie just came out on Tuesday, and it's over. And then you get in there and it's done. They're all 80 copies of them are gone. All 7,000 copies of Scream can't be found. So, but the seating thing, I'm curious about with you. Where do you like to sit? I think the last movie we saw together was Solo.
Yeah,
I don't really remember. I like sitting towards the back on the edge. And the reason I like sitting on the end of a row is just because it's the same reason why I like sitting on the end of the row in an airplane, is because I just like to come and go as I please.
Yes.
Without disturbing anyone. It just takes so much stress off of me. But also I'm very similar to you, where I like getting the movies very early. Not very, but like, I don't mind rolling into a movie 20 minutes before showtime.
Okay.
And I feel like it's just, you kind of get your place and you kind of settle in. It's just too much, because once the previews start and the commercials, you can't see. And I don't feel like I'm properly settled in at that time. And then the other thing that's worth mentioning in this regard, I think, is just this, I guess, this idea of like how you can game the system, because I learned this in purchasing tickets online. And I actually used to do this in San Francisco, where if I was going with someone, just buy tickets that are 1 seat apart from each other and leave one in the middle. And if you do this, if the place is crowded and someone has that ticket in the middle, which happens sometimes, then you just say like, hey, can we just switch? Right. And if not, then you ensure that no one is near you. And it's very simple to do. And I'm always surprised, especially when you sit at the edge. It's always quite a basic thing.
Very
So
smart.
where do you sit?
I like to sit. Well, first of all, getting to the movie theater early, I love. I have to. I'm like very fastidious about that. I have to get there. I don't like to rush, first of all, when I'm driving. I like to take my time. You got to get there. You got to park. You got to get snacks, right? You got to get all your concessions. You got to get in there. Now, I remember, this is interesting, because in recent years, I'll say the last 20 years even, you get to a movie 45 minutes early, there's something playing on the screen. You have the pre-movie Hollywood news show. You have, and then, sometimes I've been in movies more recently over the last few years, which we've all experienced, where the coming attractions, the trailers could be 40 minutes.
It's nuts.
Right? It's
totally
crazy.
insane.
But I like to be there for all of it. But I remember pre multiplex and pre the digital age where you were assured some sort of entertainment regardless of how early you got there. I remember getting there early back in the day, let's say the mid 80s, and staring at a blank screen for a half hour. There was nothing. It wasn't like there was going to be a clown making balloon animals or something. Like, you were just sitting there,
Yeah, we couldn't even ask at that point for like the quizzes that they would do, where it's like,
exactly.
This man started in the 1981.
That's a great point, because that was like a transitional thing, right? Where they had the little games that you could play before they had right?
Yeah, that was like in the 90s, and they also started integrating in the 80s like the weird like the kitschy, campy cartoons in the beginning, where it would be like the Coke dancing with the candy and shit. It was all sorts of weird shit going on in American movie theaters. I don't really know.
Oh my God, it's true. They did, everyone realized, think like we could reinvent this nostalgia, this camp of like, let's all go to the movies with the dancing popcorn and the no smoking PSAs and all that kind of stuff. They thought that would be charming. I guess it was pretty charming. But yeah, so I like to get there early because I really like to sit. Helene's like-minded with me, thank God, with this too. Like, I don't think we've ever been to a movie where we sat anywhere else. Back wall has to be all the way in the back, because then you automatically take out the person the annoying person sitting behind you.
Sure.
Part of the equation, right?
Sure.
You automatically weed that out. That's not a possibility. So you sit against the back wall, and the digital projectors, I like to be centered, but a little off center, because the digital projector is usually centered on that wall up. Now they're relatively silent. They're not the old analog projectors, but a little off center right on the back wall. That's the perfect sweet spot for me for sitting in the movie theater. And that's really a big part of getting there early, is making sure I could get that spot. Because then even if you have people on the sides, and there are a lot of people that like to sit on the back wall, they'll at least, hopefully keep their distance by a couple of seats. And, that's for me. And I think a lot of that comes from like just being an annoying kid in the movie theater. And a lot of it, again, we didn't care what we were seeing. It was part of the social thing. Maybe we went in to see the movie, and then we would just be throwing popcorn, throwing candy, being noisy, being a pain in the ass. So you automatically get that, the potential of like the horrific junior high kids or high school kids sitting behind you.
Were you one of those kids that
we did that? I mean, I don't think I was too bad. I didn't go in there just to do that, but we were certainly like, especially by the time it got to like being 16 and being with PJ and all that kind of stuff, like we were definitely
the worst.
We were definitely making ruckus in the movie theater. There was, most of the time we weren't there because we were serious about a movie. We could have went to see like Lethal Weapon 2 and thought like, okay, we're just gonna fool around, and then we just got into the movie. Maybe that happened. Luckily for everybody in the theater, we just got sucked into the actual movie against our will or whatever. But yeah, I think that's part of the thing. It's like a defensive thing. It's like, all right, if I sit in the back, then karma can't be revisited on me. Right?
I must say, I was never one of those people.
Never did that stuff?
I don't know. I'm sure it's times it's not been true in my life, but I'm pretty self-conscious, where I would prefer that you never knew I was anywhere at all. That's kind of like how I want to like live my life. It would be my preference if you were like, who was that quiet man that was sitting behind me, and you think really hard about who it was, but you can't even see his face.
Yeah.
That's in your mind's eye. That's kind of how I want to be at the movies. And in all general, and because it's so funny, like the kind of shit that I've seen go on at concerts and games and movie theaters, it's like so, especially in San Francisco, it's just so funny. Like I've been to Giants games like quite a few times at AT&T Park, beautiful park. People smoking weed in the crowd. It's like it doesn't even matter what's going on in that place ever.
That's so funny.
And just I think about all the things that I've, especially concerts, like weed culture at concerts and drinking culture, like just all of the weed I've smoked at concerts and the crazy shit that's gone on. I remember, I'll tell this story. I don't think Ramon will mind. We went and saw 311 in New Jersey when we were in college. Yeah, shout out to him, of course. And he had to pee really bad, and and 311 was like coming on. We were like on the grass, like at P&C or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he just, when the lights went down and they were coming on, he just peed.
How did he do it? Because you guys must have been around people.
Yeah, like he like kneeled down or so. It was like some. Why don't we have him on? I just will never forget it, because like then the lights came up and he was just done, and it was like no one had any idea that this drunk 18 or 19-year-old kid just like basically
that's fantastic
peed somewhere like in front of everyone.
Sometimes you just gotta go.
Yeah, and because you didn't want to, you don't want to miss the opening song. I mean, that's the best part of seeing a concert. Is like what they're going to open with and what's the energy going to be like.
Right.
All right, so let's get through a couple more of these and we can wrap it up. Joey Hornreich wrote into us. I'll be curious about your answer to this. He says, do you guys get absolutely stoned or drunk before a movie theater experience? Being a previous projectionist at a movie theater, my friends and I would always get super high before a big blockbuster movie and grab a few drinks at the movie theater bar before all going in for free. That combo would make any movie enjoyable. Keep killing it, boys.
Good point.
So, as a kid, sometimes I would get stoned. As an adult in college and as an adult, almost by a rule, I'm typically stoned. So, so when I go to a movie theater, there's a good shot. Now, the story I always tell is that I remember being so out of my mind when I saw Dark Knight Rises with my friend Nate, who works at Google now. I'll never forget that because I was so out of my mind the entire movie, and then I walked out of it and I was like, I think that's the best movie I've ever seen.
Oh,
and
wow!
I didn't really mean it that way, but I was like so into it, and that's why I think part of why I love that movie so much is because I was so riveted by it. When I remember seeing it, I remember how excited I was, and I was like leaning forward in my chair and all of that, and I was just so into it. And then I never saw it again for like several years.
Wow.
So I do. So anyway, but drinking, I would drink again at these Alamo Drafthouse type things, but I have such a weak bladder that it would be very audacious for me to go into a movie theater having just had a beer or something, because then I'd be getting up 5 times. I just, for some reason, I have a small bladder. I can never empty it.
I'd be the same way. I'm the same way with that. Yeah. Beer and a movie would be a bad combo for me.
Yeah. Did you ever, when you were a kid, get drunk or stoned before going to a movie?
No. And I started drinking very casually, very late, like 19 years old. I never really touched alcohol before that. So I had a very late introduction to drinking. And of course, I didn't smoke weed until even later than that, into my 20s. And that was even those times were very few and far between. We've talked about that on the show before. So no, that wasn't a big thing with me, but I could also see how it would make a movie better. And I could also see how it could make maybe a shitty movie even elevate a shitty movie to mediocre status. So I could understand doing it. I think I was remiss. I think I missed out on that.
Yeah, you might have. And then the final question we have here, and we can go into whatever you want that we haven't touched on, but I think this is a good one here. Josh the Nomad wrote in. Said, hey, Moriarty boys, my question is about things that can ruin your movie-going experience. What are your pet peeves? For me, it's when people clap at the end of the movie. It just feels so unnecessary. Maybe it's the curmudgeon in me. Anyway, keep making great content and can't wait for the Avatar knockback.
Hey,
yeah, we will do Avatar later this year. We promised.
That one scares me.
Yeah, me too.
Scares me.
So I'm actually just eager to get it over with, to be perfectly honest with you. But pet peeves. So I agree with his pet peeve. The clapping at the end is weird. I always did agree with that, but more the notion of like clapping during a scene, or like when someone, someone comes in and punches someone, it's like, yeah, it's like, dude, we're in a movie theater. Like, shut the fuck up. What do you know what I'm talking about? Like, I remember seeing, like, I think it was Force Awakens, because I actually did see that one opening night, and people were like clapping and excited during the Lucasfilm logo and stuff. And I'm like, that's cool, but like, everyone needs to shut up now.
Right.
Like, this is a movie. And I think that's why I don't put myself in these particular situations too often, is because I would prefer to just be alone on my couch or with someone, 1 or 2 people, and not be in this situation. So I have many pet peeves. The other pet peeve I have, to be perfectly honest with you, although it's a perfectly fine thing to do, and I know many people do it, is I never understood the people that sit there and watch the credits. Now, I'm not talking about waiting for your MCU post-credit scene or something. Most movies don't do that.
No.
I think some people are trained now to think that every movie's going to do it, so they sit there.
Absolutely.
But even before Marvel was the thing, I always was like fascinated by the people that are like, oh, I want to watch the credits. I'm like, well, why? I mean, it's a nice, respectful thing, I guess, but it's like, I don't know, why do you care about this? The thing at the end of the credits, when you knew it was getting into the end, it would always say soundtrack on vinyl, cassette, and compact disc, and all that kind of, and then you knew you were getting towards the end.
Yes, absolutely. You see the logo, the Dolby logo, whatever.
Right. Exactly. But what are your pet peeves? Do you have any pet peeves in the theater?
I love bringing up the closing credit thing, because there are a lot of people that do that. Now, I can understand if you worked on the movie, that would probably be a big thing. I would always love, I lived in LA for a little while, but seeing movies in Hollywood, I bet you see that more often. Somebody's waiting to see their name in that crawl, that 5-minute crawl.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's very cool. It just seems so. I do that with video games too, where I'm like, nah. I like skip, unless it's like a game where I might know some people that work on it, or if it's a small team where it just pops through.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm like, I can't sit here. I don't care who did PR on this game in Poland. You know?
I wouldn't do that either. I mean, that even back in the NES days, I was too impatient to watch like the end of a Castlevania game. It was like,
and it was all fake names anyway. It's like Sony is especially egregious with this, with their first party games, where it's like, now we're gonna go through Sony Computer Entertainment Europe, and here's all the people that it's like, oh my god.
Oh my God.
Like this many people didn't work on this game. Why are you like, what?
Yeah,
so
anyway, I know. That's crazy. And you know what? The Marvel thing is a great point. And I would argue that Pixar really started it with the outtake reels, right? They were very cleverly started with that, doing their outtake reels, their gag reels at the end and stuff like that. And then that sort of dovetailed into the Marvel thing with giving hints for the next movie and everything like that. And I wonder how many people sit there just because they feel like they're getting their money's worth. Like, I paid $11 for this ticket. I'm going to watch this whole damn thing, like from frame to frame A to frame Z. But pet peeves in the movies, I remember one very specific experience I had. It's probably just people talking. And I don't even mind if people are talking low or talking occasionally, like maybe say something, but it's almost like you sitting, when you get on that airplane that you sat next to the wrong person. And when they strike up a conversation with you, you're hoping it's like a one-off. And by the time you take off, it's not going to be like the entire flight. It's almost like that. Like as soon as I hear somebody talking in the movie theater, once the movie starts, because it's kind of free reign until even through the trailers, I think.
Sure.
In all fairness, right?
Right.
Then you think like, okay, I hope this is a one-off. But I had one experience, very odd experience, and I think it was Revenge of the Sith, where we sat next to we were in the back row, it was Helene and I think it was just Helene and I. And there was a girl, there were girls that were high school girls, which I already thought was like a little strange. They looked like cheerleader-y type girls, and there was only 3 of them. And not to stereotype or anything like that, but it was just kind of a weird fit. The movie had just come out, and that was already on my radar. And then one of them started, at a certain point in the movie, every time Anakin came on the screen, she acted like she was scared. Did I ever tell you this story?
No.
And she would be like, oh my God, and like hold her friend and everything like that. And at first,
she was serious or she was...
At first, I thought she was kidding.
Okay.
But then it started happening so much, and you could tell also by her 2 friends' reactions that maybe the girl had like some sort of issues, right? That had some sort of problem. But every time Anakin came on the screen, she would make this really pronounced afraid reaction, and she would like grab her friends and say, oh my God, and like really where I thought she was being a pain in the ass at first, but I think she was really scared. But then I'm thinking like, why did they take her to this movie? Like, didn't they know like she would react like this? I mean, it would be hard to just ruin that movie for me. I really didn't care for it anyway, obviously. But
Revenge of the Shit, is that what it's called?
I'll never forget that. And it's the only time I ever saw that movie. That and Attack of the Clones, I only saw once, each in the theater. So I'll never forget that. I've only saw that movie the one time, and that was with that girl making the noise. So I think even like whispering and stuff like that. You know who talks in the movie theater? I'm gonna give him away right now, and you may know this already. Dad. He will just talk. I remember seeing The Force Awakens. He'll just talk. I'm like mortified.
Mortified, yeah.
He turns around, he's like, I don't understand, like what? I'm like, wait a second. And it's because he doesn't give a shit. Who's gonna say anything to Dad? But I remember seeing The Force Awakens with him. I was so excited. We were out on Long Island. I had seen it once, and he hadn't seen any of the new movies yet. And we went and took the kids to a play. Him and Nancy, me and Helene and the 2 kids in Patchogue. And then we were going to get back, drop the family at home, and then we were going to run out to go see a late show of Force Awakens, just me and him. I was super excited. And I remember seeing it with him, and there wasn't a lot of people in the theater, you know? And he was literally, Colin, just like this, I'm telling you, he's turning to me and be like, so Dig, I don't understand. Where's Luke? I don't understand. I was like, oh my God, Dad, like what are you doing? Did you ever see him do that?
My only dad, like vivid dad memory is one we've talked about in the theater. Is when you and I both started laughing during Lord of the Rings, and he like gave us an icy glare. I was in high school. I was in 12th grade when Fellowship came out, and we laughed at my arse line, you know, my arcs. And I remember you and I just both busted out laughing, and he actually I remember it because he was like, he gave us like because he's very serious about Tolkien.
Oh,
you know.
Don't mess with
I mean, I don't know that it
gets
any more serious than that.
Gave me the dead eye. The dog eye.
Yeah, Dad's one of those guys who just doesn't care. You know, I respect that a lot about him in a lot of ways I've learned over time. Like, you know, He doesn't care about his clothes. He doesn't care about, you know, I mean, he dresses up when he needs to, but he doesn't care what anyone thinks about anything.
No.
You know, it's 90% of it is good, you know.
It is.
You should care maybe a little bit more that his house is 50 degrees. You should care about that,
but you know what though, in general, right? Yeah. Watching a movie is a weird thing because like, especially like Star Wars, when you were talking, it reminded me of this. Like, it feels like there's a camaraderie or kindred spirits. You're going to see a Star Wars movie. You've been excited for this. So you feel like there's like a unification in the audience, but you have to balance that because it's a social viewing experience. You're there with a bunch of strangers. You can't just like make random outbursts. You're going to disrupt somebody else's time.
Also,
with that thing, you know,
you're absolutely right. And also, Star Wars fans, there's so many different sects of Star Wars fans and they all hate each other that you should definitely know. Like, you're amongst people like us that like don't even want to be there. You're amongst like people, you know, like people that are like people like us that just begrudgingly went because we feel like we have to. And then,
all right, and then, come on, show me the damn thing.
And then there are people that are there that are really excited and little kids and people that don't even know what Star Wars is. And it's just like all sorts of different group. Because I did feel bad when I saw episode 8 with Ramon in Santa Monica. I started laughing during the Princess Leia space scene. I actually started busting out laughing and people gave me a dirty look.
Did they?
I was like, yeah, and I was like, to be fair, I'm like, I'm sorry. I wasn't doing it to be rude. I thought it was really funny.
It was weird. Yeah. Who expected that?
It was so, because I was like, oh, Princess Leia, that's how they're going to kill her. It's really, anyway. Yeah. So
am I doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a weird Superman thing she was doing. Very strange. But, yeah, other pet peeve, it's not a pet peeve so much, but just a kind of a memory. There was that time, let's say between 1994 and 1998, when laser pointers were like really funny to everyone. And, you know, I think there's a Seinfeld episode about it. You know, there would be a guy with a laser pointer would be like on the person's boob or something, or like, you know what I'm talking about? And that was like a thing that happened for a very brief amount of time. Yes. And then suddenly it just stopped, you know, like as quick as it came, it went. Do you remember that?
I have to say, if I saw this now, I would laugh. I don't know what, it just speaks to my very, you know, I have like the sense of humor of a 3-year-old.
Because
did you see that? Did you experience that at a movie?
Oh yeah, definitely. And it also, because then like they have to come in and they're looking, like there's a guy walking in front like looking for the beacon. But I think there's a Seinfeld episode where like George is like making funny comments, like he goes to movies he's already seen to make funny timely comments that the audience laughs at.
Riffs.
But then there's a guy with a laser pointer and he's getting all the laughs and it really annoys George. You know?
I never saw that. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic.
I'll find out what episode it is for like where he like everyone's laughing at his commentary and like so he keeps going to the movies to do it and then I think someone like has a laser pointer and is like stealing his thunder and it's like not even that's sophisticated funny, comedy, dude. And he gets really mad about it.
Oh, yeah. That's so fun. I was when our last trip to Disney World was about a year ago. There was a guy who, you know what, you just fall in with people when you're at the park. I think we were at Hollywood Studios and you just end up, you're kind of shoulder to shoulder with these people all day. For some reason, you're on the same trajectory. You're going from attraction to attraction, ride to ride, and you just end up on the same things at the same time. There was a guy, and he was genuinely funny. He was like Uncle Mike funny. And he would riff on everything. Like we were in the Haunted Mansion in the movie beforehand in the elevator that you watched, like the little Twilight Zone episode. But I was getting pissed off because I was jealous. You know, and I remember I don't know if it was the heat or whatever. I was so grouchy that day and I was just like, yeah, I was getting so annoyed with the guy, but it really, in retrospect, I was just jealous because the guy was like legitimately funny and everybody was laughing. Like he had a captive audience and like, it wasn't just one thing. Like I was half the day with this guy. I had to like put up with this guy and he was just like on his game. He was like on his
like
game.
He's like Don Rickles out there.
Like fucking Don Rickles over here. And I was just getting so grumpy about it because, and it, you know, it just turned out like I wasn't mad that he was making noise or ruining anything. I was just mad that it wasn't me.
That's fair enough.
Fair enough.
Is there anything that we didn't talk about yet that you wanted to bring up?
I have to say that was pretty prescient. I have a list here of things I wanted to touch on, like talking points that I thought could be fun to address. And like, sure. I think we hit most of the things. There's just a couple of memories. There's 2 memories I want to talk about. And I think one of them, well, I don't think I've ever told you about this. And I think it's kind of hard. It would be hard for this to happen today. This was in the 80s. This was 84, I think. And it was Dana and I with Uncle Mike and Aunt Carla, and we just ended up in a movie that was completely inappropriate for us. And still to this day, I don't know what the thinking was there. And it was I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a weird Michael Keaton movie called Johnny Dangerously. It's a comedy.
Yeah, okay.
And it's like a mafia spoof. You know, it's like kind of a mafia film, but it's kind of a mafia parody where this guy who's like kind of like a guy who's, you know, a pretty straight flyer, you know, a pretty straight-laced dude, ends up taking up the life of like a mobster in order to pay for his mom's medical bills or something. And it's a comedy. It's PG-13, one of the early PG-13 movies. And so you wouldn't think it would be egregious, but I remember being in the movie theater and like sitting there and being like looking around like, I don't think this is like we're supposed to be in this movie, because I was 10. I was 9 or 10, right? So I remember literally looking at Dana and being like, like there's parts with boobs in it and stuff like that, and I'm just like thinking like, I guess, you know, we
did they care? Did they seem to care?
That we stayed for the whole movie. I remember thinking like, the only experience I've ever had, because I went to the movies a lot. Mom and Dad, for sure, but also Aunt Joni took me to the movies a lot. There was a period of time in my teens where I went to the movies a lot with Grandpa, and we saw things that were like, you know, Platoon and Casualties of War. He was really into war movies, so like, but at that point I was already, you know, it was like, even though Casualties of War is pretty heavy, like I was already in 9th grade or 10th grade, like I could handle it. You could understand like a 15 or 16-year-old going, but like we were young. And it was the only time, like, you know, Aunt Joni took us to all the like marquee movies back then, Ghostbusters and Karate Kid and all the must-see things, right? But we just popped up in this movie. I remember it was a very snowy day. It was cold. We already thought Aunt Carl and Uncle Mike were awesome anyway. We always thought they were the coolest. You know, they're only 13 or 14 years older than me.
Yeah, I was gonna say they were in their 20s when this, like their mid 20s when this is
super young.
So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to think about it, you know.
And they were just like the coolest. And they did, you know, we would spend the weekend, especially Dana and I would spend the weekend with them, and we'd go out to eat and go bowling and all this fun stuff. Stay up late, go to the diner. The movies wasn't usually a part of the thing with them. But for some reason, I remember it was cold, probably couldn't do a lot of other things. So we end up in this movie, and I remember thinking like, Mom and Dad are going to be pissed. Because there's like a woman talking about her boobs and all this kind of stuff. And it's one of those weird things where it's like not even necessary for me to watch the movie again, because there's no, like, my memories of it are so much funnier than watching it again would just dilute the experience. But I remember that, and I remember being like, you know, it was one of those times where you could end up in a movie that really wasn't appropriate. It's not like you know, back then you couldn't go on YouTube, you couldn't check the trailer out. You know, maybe you would catch a blurb in the Daily News or Newsday or something, but like besides that, you really had no approximation of what the movie was going to be besides the rating. And PG-13 movies it was a new thing then. It could swing either way. But I do remember that, and what's so charming about that experience is there's just no way that's going to happen now. Like you know everything about a movie. If you had any doubt that it was appropriate for a certain age, you would be able to, you know, remedy that, or just not go to
I think there are parent websites that like go very deep into like everything in a video game or everything in a movie, so you know like what it is.
Absolutely. You know? And the other memory, Kyle, that I have, I don't know if I ever talked to you about this either. In 1983, it's a marquee memory for me, was seeing Return of the Jedi, and it was the first time I saw a line go around the movie building. It was like, you know, we probably saw it right away within the first couple of days it came out. We learned our lesson from Empire because, again, that movie got spoiled for me because Mom and Dad took me like a week late. And Empire being special memory, too, because that's the only movie I've ever seen in the drive-in and in the conventional movie theater. So I saw it both ways. Return of the Jedi, I'll never forget it. And Temple of Doom was very similar, and I think the same theater in Coram on Long Island. But
the next year.
Where it was like, what's that?
The next year.
Yeah, the next year, right? Very similar. Yeah, in time, in era when it came out. But Return of the Jedi, I remember the people being around the building. And today it wouldn't be a thing because like the kids would never experience that because you get the tickets ahead of time. The advent of the multiplex, you know, that was probably right before the multiplex really took off as a thing, which I can imagine was like a pretty big deal just in terms of buying that space. You know, it was like, how can we make this profitable? When you have to buy the movies and you have to, you know, you have to first of all build and then rent or, you know, pay for that enormous space for a multiplex.
Yeah, and it's not just square foot. I always think about that too. It's not just square footage, it's cubic feet because you have to heat it and cool it and all that kind of stuff. It's like, holy fuck. When you think about Boston, when you think about Brookhaven, it's like, and I don't know, maybe it's bigger than or smaller than I remember, but I remember it being like must have been like 40 feet high or something like that.
Massive.
You know, I always think about that.
Oh, it was massive, dude. Even on Long Island, I think really Comac was the only approximation for how, and Comac might have came first, busier area of the island too. Those were enormous theaters, and that was a big thing for somebody that grew up in the 70s, because we had that 1, 2, or 3 theater building, whereas like I remember seeing Back to the Future and it was still like that, you know, where it was like, you know, a couple of theaters in there, and they might have all been running, all 2 or 3 might have been running the same picture or whatever. That was really those are both really funny experiences for me. And really the only other thing that I want to mention, which you touched on too, was like there was that time period of being kids, and I don't think it's going to be the same for kids now, where the movie theater was really the center of our social universe. So we really went to see everything. And I think in a way, not to sound overly nerdy about it, but I think in a way it made us really discerning moviegoers, which later played into TV and the content that we take in on HBO and the miniseries and all that kind of stuff. But I think it made us discerning moviegoers because we saw everything. You know, we saw the comedies, we saw dramas, we saw buddy cop pictures and thrillers and horror films and kids films, and we would go to see Disney features and all that kind of stuff. We didn't really, you know, discriminate. We went to see everything. And I think it played into not only as viewers, but also our generation's making films too. You could see that, not just in addressing genre and nostalgia and all that, but I think in just becoming, you know, I think it fed into our creativity a little bit, you know, whereas kids now, it's like, I'm not watching that. I'm not watching that. You know, I'm going to stick to this thing.
Right.
Thank God for things like Stranger Things, which is kind of a reintroduction to genre, which I don't think they even realize. The kids, they just think it's cool in its own right, but they don't understand, like, you're watching us as kids. That's what you're watching, you know. And then as soon as you tell them that, then it's like, oh, I don't know, that's not that cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole meta philosophy behind that show, I think, and so many programs today is like capture the mom and dad and capture the kid through the mom and dad, or vice versa. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Times are different now. I just stopped seeing movies when I went to college for the most part. I started working my way backwards a lot. And I think when I was in college is when it became very clear too, in the early aughts, that TV was going to be much better than movies. And we're at the point now where it's like not even close. Yeah, it's like literally not even close. So to me, I'm like, I hate to say this, but if I never saw another movie again, I don't know that I'd give a flying fuck. There's just way too much good TV. If I'm invested enough in a 2-hour story, I want to be invested in that story for 20 hours.
An ongoing thing.
And if it's not good enough to spend 2 hours with, I'm not going to spend any time with it.
Right.
Because there's too much demanding my time in the TV space. I mean, when I think about the Handmaid's Tale, for instance, Margaret Atwood, they made a movie about of 30 years ago or so for that, and it's almost unimaginable that it was a movie. You know, it's like, what? This is so... now, the first season is the book. The other 2 are not, but...
Okay.
It's like they needed 10 episodes to tell that story, and I like that philosophy, personally.
I mean, it's crazy how rapidly it's changing, dude. And then on top of that, you have the Apples and the HBOs and the Netflixes and the Hulus and the Amazons. You have them commissioning work from real, you know, established creators, Martin Scorsese, Noah Baumbach, Glenn Keane, like, and saying, like, do this thing for us. And here's a Hollywood scaled budget, and it's going to come out on our platform. You know, we could just completely bypass the movie theaters. And then you have that seemingly small, you know, other side of things, other side of the equation, or people that are sort of kicking back against that, like Christopher Nolan, where like, no, the theater is still, you know, is still really important. It's going to be really interesting to see where it goes. I mean, I work in entertainment. I don't see, not necessarily film, but I do work in the entertainment business. And I think, you know, for animation, it's gangbusters right now. We're really fortunate, especially because of COVID. Like, they finally started writing articles about that. But I called this a year ago. I was like, animation is going to be huge because we're used to working remotely. You know, animation has already been going like this for years. I've been working on shows remotely for teams in Burbank and Glendale and Hollywood and everything for 15 years. You know, this has already been a thing. It's only compounded now by COVID. We could still do our jobs. It's not, right. There's something missing with not collaborating in the same room. You know, Zoom calls are great. Slack is great, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I'm all for movie theaters. And I think a lot of it has to do with what we were saying earlier, right? Like, there's not socially, and I think a lot of this has to do with dating also, which is not going to be a thing that goes away. People need a place to go and socialize, you know, and with movies, it's like going out to a restaurant. It's like going anywhere else to do something for leisure, for entertainment. It's like you get dressed. It's a little bit of an event. You're out and about socially with other people, mingling and cohabitating and like, you know, exchanging with other people. So there's going to be a call for that anyway, and I'm in support of that. But it also, when you get into things like, it's just like with the workforce right now, you get into things like overhead expense and all that kind of stuff. Is it really worth it? Is it really worth, you know, can we just cut out the middleman and just go directly to, again, you know, direct to video, where it used to be like this dirty word, like, oh, that's a Roger Corman-esque B-movie schlock piece of shit. Now it's like Martin Scorsese making movies directly for Netflix.
Yeah,
and
they're
on
putting
the same
them,
level as
and
Casino.
they're putting they put Scorsese's movies in theaters like The Irishman just so it can get nominated for awards that
exactly.
they had no intention of having a run, you know. So
good point.
They're seeing, it's kind of funny because Netflix was the first one to really be able to play it both ways. They started doing that when House of Cards came out and they started winning Emmys, and people were like, wow, Netflix, like it was literally 10 years ago when people were like, wow, Netflix is winning Emmys, and now it's like unimaginable that network TV would ever beat any of these these companies. It's a total arms race. And it's funny because I love The Division, I mentioned earlier, and they're making a movie for The Division, and I was like, oh, I wish it was a TV show. They're doing it on Netflix or Amazon or something, and you know, they did what is the John Ryan or whatever show, the Tom Clancy show,
yeah,
with John Krasinski. And
yes,
so I'm always defaulting now towards like, oh, I want 10 hours of this, I don't want 2 hours of this. And so maybe I'm getting a little greedy, and maybe that's a little reductive too, but I just feel like people demand longer storytelling because it's so rife for and so accessible for people to be able to spend the amount of time, and the money being made. You know, Netflix isn't, you know, mega profitable. They spend so much money, but when you really think about just the latent money they make, $15, $20 a month, and everyone's on board, or Amazon, where you have Amazon Prime, which is just so practical because for packages, and then you just get all of this shit for free. It's pretty incredible, and
it's crazy.
I think a lot of these places are going to start cannibalizing themselves. Like CBS has already turned into Paramount Plus. I mean, that's going to disappear, I assume. But then they have a bunch of shit coming out for that too, and
yeah,
a lot of it is like nostalgia and all of that. So I just, my whole thing right now though is that I know people want me to watch The Mandalorian and stuff, but I think Disney is just so abhorrent right now with the way they're acting about stuff, especially with Gina Carano, whatever her name is.
Oh, that whole thing, yeah.
Where I'm like, you know what, get fucked. I know that me not having a Disney Plus subscription doesn't mean much, but I'm like, I'm not paying you for this. You know, maybe in the future, but
yeah,
no, not now.
It's funny that Disney Plus has been the holdout. There's a lot of people that feel, because I think everybody has Amazon, obviously. Everybody has Netflix. You know, I say everybody, but 90% of people, whatever. But Disney seems like the holdout. Like, people are able to say, like, I'm not going to go in for the Disney Plus thing. You know, that whole thing with that was crazy. I'm interested to know if you would like The Mandalorian or not. I'm not completely sold that you're going to like it. You know what I mean? I'm interested. You know, eventually you will get to it.
Yeah, but I'll watch it.
I'm interested. I'm not 100% on board for you digging The Mandalorian. I just don't know about you with that format. I don't know. You know, and I didn't love the whole thing. I think they stayed on that Grogu character, that Baby Yoda character, for too long. It became too much about that.
What's his name? I don't even think I knew his name. What's his name? I didn't even know he had a name.
That's the whole thing. Yeah, for spoilers, it turns out that his name is Grogu, which I guess was a recent development in the series. Like, you wouldn't find out his name until that. You know, that's not a spoiler, but you know, obviously the thing's gonna have a name. But,
yeah, no, of course. Yeah, but I don't consider that a spoiler at all.
Yeah, I'm curious. And then the new stuff that Disney has coming out, it seems, you know, I don't know. I like that they're doing seemingly smart series, but they're doing a lot. And when you do a lot, it seems like, you know, there's going to be something for everybody. You know what I mean? It's like everybody's going to like us in some way or another. Like, we'll just throw out enough stuff so we can please everybody. It's like that flop sweat mentality is like, yeah, it's not elegant. You know, you got to be careful.
Yeah, I think the inelegance is, you're exactly right with that, but I also think it's, you undervalue yourself when you release too much. Like, I keep seeing these slates of Marvel movie or Marvel TV shows and movies and stuff, and I'm like, is this, to the point where I'm like, is this even real? Like, what is I remember thinking that years ago when it was like Doctor Strange and whoever, you know, and all these things, and obviously they're big, and I know they're trying to like meld WandaVision now and other things, and whatever's going on with that, I don't give a fuck about that show, but
Everybody loves it. I can't.
But it's so strange to me because I'm just like, what is all of this? I don't even know what any of this is. Like, why are people? How can people possibly be excited about this when I see comic book sales numbers that are abysmal?
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of it is, I look at the sales sometimes and it's like Thor, 10,000 copies. It's like, what? Like Abraxia 2 sold more copies than that. It's like, but then everyone's like really excited about the source material. And I'm like, I don't know. It seems to me some people are excited about it and it's this cultural phenomenon and people are holding on for dear life. And for some reason, they're letting Disney just wring them out. And I think it's like, I saw a Fantastic Four logo on the most recent slate. And I'm oh my God, there was already 2 reboots of this. I remember, and it's the same with, so anyway, I'm complaining, but nonetheless, movie theaters,
my friend. Movie theaters.
That was fun. That was a fun conversation.
I'm glad was super fun.
We did that. Thank you so much for voting for it on Patreon. Patreon.com/laststandmedia. I don't know if you saw it over there, Dig. I actually won't let them vote for games anymore for the time being because we got a backlog. Yeah, I'll let me pull it up here. Do I have it even on this computer? I don't even think I have it on this computer. Yeah, we have to do God of War. So God of War 2006 or 2018 one. But I was like, no, we'll do God of War 2005. I think we're skewing too new now. I had no problem doing Horizon or The Last of Us, but it's like, I actually think I am going to institute a rule and maybe I'll write a post about it where I'm like, and we have to hold ourselves to it because we've also been bad about it.
Yeah.
Where it's like things have to be 10 years old or more or something, it's like I don't even have anything to say about Horizon really right now. Like it would be much more interesting to ask me in 10 years what I think of Horizon when I actually go back and play it.
Right. Makes sense.
Because when we did you know what I mean? Or
yes.
So we have to figure that out. But this was one of those kind of interstitials that people voted for, and I was very happy to do it. It was a very, very exciting conversation. I'm actually kind of surprised we never did it. So
I know it's amazing it hasn't come up. Now we've, our movie theater experiences and throws have come up here and there, but that was that was really fluid too. Like it's amazing how we hit all the talking points without even conversing about it. We got it like that, I think.
Yeah, we don't plan the show really. I mean, we have our own notebooks of things and ways we watch things, but we don't actually I don't write anything, and Dagan doesn't see the letters I pull either, and that's by design as well. So it's different than Sacred Symbols, where that's just written and everyone can see it.
Nice and conversational, audience, I think. Right. I hope.
I think so too. You guys let us know. So Dig, let's wrap it up with a dad joke. And by the way, we heard from our sister Allie. We heard from Allie last week because she, our sister, she was very happy to be included. So
she was, and she deserves it. It was a good dad joke.
Definitely.
Now this particular dad joke, I think it was the hardest I've ever had to search for a dad joke that I liked. And I'm not saying it took a super long time. It took like 10 minutes, but that's a long time because there's a lot of dad jokes.
You were in like Jay's store in the stacks looking for the dad joke.
I had to really scour for this one as compared to normal. I just find one like, oh, I never heard of that one. Okay. Kyle, how can you find Will Smith in the snow?
I don't know.
You follow the Fresh Prince.
That's good. That's a great one.
Not bad, right? It's like one of those ones that I don't know how this hasn't come up yet.
Yeah, that's really good. It's so funny. Dad jokes are just puns. I was thinking about that recently. They're just puns. There's nothing else to it.
No.
So like you can take any pun and make it into a dad joke.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I should be able to be a little better at writing them because I'm a big pun appreciator.
Right.
I have to admit.
I was going to try to put them together. Punreciator.
Sure.
All right. That was horrible. Dig, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. It was fun.
Good to see you as always. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of our show. Whether you listen on audio feeds or on YouTube, leave us nice reviews, comment, thumb up, do all those kinds of things. I'm not going to be like some of the shows I watch where it's like, it doesn't matter what you say or if you thumb it up or thumb it down. They don't even care because all of that's good for the algorithm. We'd really prefer if you said nice things and thumbed us up. And of course, support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Early ad-free access. Couldn't do it without you. New merch, laststandmedia.shop. We'll see you next time for more Knockback. Until then, bye. It's a little Matul. Bye.
Oh, nice.
Knockback, a retro and nostalgia podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and the Philadelphia suburbs, USA. The show was conceived by and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Dagan Moriarty. Knockback's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including KnockBack, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.